All right, hello everyone. Good afternoon. Hopefully everyone has had a good chance to relax, actually get outside and enjoy some of the nice weather for a bit. I'm going to keep rambling until the actual screen shows up appropriately. But yeah, I guess I'll do a quick introduction. Hi everyone, I'm Eugene Leventhal. I'm the head of operations at the Smart Contract Research Forum. At some point soon, I will be walking you through a bit of a discussion on research impact networks or what a decentralized research center can actually look like. But yeah, I'm very excited to get to be part of the activities that are taking place at Global Governance Gathering, and it's definitely been a great day or two of discussion. I don't know how many folks have had the chance to actually join yesterday for the DAO Science conversation that a few of us were leading, but it was great seeing the turnout and the enthusiasm around that. At this point, I'm just wondering how much actual time I'm going to need to start doing filler. I guess I should have prepped a 5-minute stand-up set just in case.
Settings.
Okay. All right, well, I'll keep talking for now in the meantime while we're working through AV issues. And some of these things will actually need slides, so hopefully we'll get to show that at some point. But in general, I want to have a discussion as much as possible, or at least present the idea of decentralized research centers. And the starting point that I'm taking for how I think about this is actually through the impact network framework. So if anyone here has heard of or interacted with David Ehrlichman, he has a book called Impact Networks. I have a quote up here that I'll show you at some point. But yeah, in general, I really like these ideas of impact networks effectively being these networks that are a mix of a healthy, vibrant community as well as an effective organization. So how can we think of pairing the efficiency of organizations with healthy, vibrant communities that are very focused on, being mission aligned, having a common goal, having a very deep personal culture, intrinsic motivation being present, as well as more of the extrinsic and financial components that are very present in actual organizations. And so I think this kind of network model is a really interesting one to start thinking about research more broadly, or as I'm thinking of it now, sort of what is the network stack necessary? What are the combination of different networks that we need and that need to be coordinated and overlapping to actually be able to drive a focused series of change in some kind of wider knowledge ecosystem? And Smart Contract Research Forum, where I work, we're very much focused on research in the Web3 space specifically. So you might see us around in some DeSci conversations. I think a lot of what we're talking about can be broadened out into research review, publication across any topic domain area. But especially for us, we are primarily interested in the impacts in the Web3 space specifically. So what does it mean for research around governance, around security, around cryptography, consensus, scaling, around core research problem areas in the Web3 space? So yeah, in a nutshell, and hopefully I'll be able to show some actual visuals to help be able to digest some of this, because I realize there's a lot in here. But one aspect of it is sort of thinking about what I think of as the intellectual network layer. And that is itself composed of multiple networks around research, around review and publication. And I'm pairing those two very intentionally because as of today, the only way you can get formal peer review is by actually trying to get published in a formal venue or go through a formal conference of some kind. Those are really the only mechanisms where you get access to some kind of formal peer review structure where you can then take your paper and say, hey, this has been peer reviewed. This is an officially recognized thing. And so we're very interested in running an experiment around open peer review and what does sort of decoupling the actual review side from the publishing side look like, and how can you provide that kind of review oversight and review support layer for groups focusing on any individual topic domain. And so, yeah, that's sort of coming back again to what I'm dubbing, just because I don't know of a better term for this yet, but sort of the intellectual network layer, where is that research, review, and publication, but all of those have their own networks under them. So it's not as though any of these are singular networks. And the intellectual side is really only one part of the overall ability to generate new knowledge and all of the facets and all the networks that are necessary for it. Because in addition to the actual research, review, and publication layer, you need more of the actual community layer. The humans just socializing and being personal with each other, right? Really deeply building that culture together. But also I see that social layer also entailing communication, which is more of media and advocacy. You need to tell people outside of your network what the heck is going on there. What research are you actually working on? What are the outputs? And how do you actually get that connected as much as possible to people experimenting and actually trying to run with things and actually trying to build new systems? So I'm sure if anyone here has spent any time in academia, the whole mission of connecting industry and academia it's a very trite one that gets thrown around very regularly. But I think when thinking about how to get research most utilized in the world and most effectively placed into the hands of builders, that connection is actually a very important one. And I think that the fact that we don't have great models to point to around it is itself an issue and a challenge area around where have some of the incentives been misaligned. Which again, if coming back to that idea of the intellectual network layer being research, review, publication, social being community, communication, and more of the initial learning pathways, right? Even those two are not enough. You still need an operational network and you need a funding network. And operational networks might seem a little odd to folks. No luck? Let me try restarting, I guess. Let's see if that'll do anything. Just use a different laptop. I can share this presentation with whatever Gmail is on here. Yeah, do you mind entering the email to share it with? And thank you. And so there's that sort of intellectual layer of research, review, publication. There's the social on the community, communication, and actual learning and pathways into this. And the operational layer, I think, is one that we don't actually have great models for, because usually operations are entirely managed within a single organization. So the idea of operations as a public good, or how do we give away operational resources to other entities, is not something that's actually been that actively experimented with. And in my opinion, at least, the only great models of it have been from the open source world, where a group of volunteers come together to manage some kind of thing, to manage open code bases or things along those lines. But what is actually providing and intentionally building that kind of operational layer for an entire industry, that does not necessarily have a lot of great precedence. So I know that's, in our opinion, a very important aspect of this overall, the different layers of networks necessary to create this more decentralized knowledge ecosystem. And the last one is obviously funding, because the world being what it is, people need to be paid for their time in order to dedicate a lot of their time towards some endeavor. And so where are you actually getting the money, both for the research funding, in our opinion, in the experiment that we're running, we want to pay reviewers for their time reviewing, and also for funding the operations layer, because that's probably the least sexy part of any of this, and one of the most important parts, because just getting more, right, like go to any academic lab, and usually if you ask them what their greatest needs are, it's going to be, like brilliant postdocs and PhDs and whatever, and then you actually dig in and ask why, and almost always it'll be like, yeah, we need good comms people and good PMs. Like finding really good project managers are a challenge in most environments, and I imagine everyone here is currently building a DAO. If only we all had 10x the number of people that we can trust and rely on to actually effectively get things done, would be a lovely change, I'm assuming, not just at the places that I've been exposed to. So, yeah. So, definitely very important to think about how all of these layers can kind of come together. And so what we want to propose with this idea of a decentralized research center is what is combining these four network layers, the intellectual side, the social side, the funding side, and the ops side. What happens when you combine all of those networks and build a cohesive culture on a single topic area? And so I know we're very excited, we at SCURF are very excited to collaborate with Connor and crew at the DAO Research Cooperative, as well as Josh Tan and crew at MetaGov to coordinate on actually building one of these out. And so, yeah, 9 minutes left. So, I guess real quick, if anyone wants a POAP, feel free to scan that. This flow is going to be a little wonky, so I need to zip through some stuff here real quick. But yeah, I will be able to share this. If you're coming to D-Side Day, you will get to see it tomorrow. But yeah, I got to switch off this one real quick, so please get your phones out ASAP. And I can show that again later. But yeah, right, I wanted to talk about the whole idea of what is a network. It's a group of people or it's some kind of system looking to accomplish something. There are present in biological structures, and then we can build more complex social ones, and then from there we can even build more complex technical ones. So networks are present in a variety of different areas. This was the quote that I was alluding to from David Ehrlichman's Impact Networks, which I think is a very great book and just an overview of how to think about it. And I think this combination, again, of the vibrant community and healthy organization is a great way to think about any kind of network and the resulting change you want to come from that network. So again, sorry I'm going to be zipping through these, but I just want to show some stuff. But yeah, keep in mind as I'm mentioning the actual research centers, the idea of impact networks and the fact that different networks will be most effective at very different scales. And it's important to understand the necessary scale based on the intended impact of that network. And then what is the right combination of networks to come together to accomplish an overarching goal that might be more complex. So I already talked about this whole idea of kind of knowledge networks really being focused on the research side, which comes out of academia, industry, and independent researchers. The review and publication side are joint, really tied through conferences or publications of specific kind. But again, this is only a smaller subset of this greater kind of network stack that I'm thinking of. So I already mentioned the fact that the intellectual or the research review and publication, and the social one, and I'll get into breaking some of these down in a little more color. But yeah, so in addition on the intellectual side real quick, the researcher training, this is more of like a PhD being trained into a postdoc. This is not general education. This is like you have all the most requisite skills. We are teaching you how we do research here in our lab kind of training. So that's what I'm dubbing as the intellectual network side. Social is this mix of community, media, and advocacy, and more of those initial learning pathways. So budding is, say, a master's student who is going to be ready to be a PhD soon. Aspiring could be anyone at the beginning of their learning journey who one day wants to be a researcher. The funding side, I think this one is more straightforward of who actually funds research. The operational side, again, usually only exists within single organizations because there are really no incentives unless someone just feels like a nice person or nice group. Why would you dedicate so many operational resources for other people's benefits? And then culture, while itself is not a network in my opinion, they are present in all networks and all collections of human beings, as well as across these, right? So there's a lot of layers in what I just mentioned, and each layer can have its own culture, which can actually clash with other layers of this and can really open the door to a lot of room for potential failure. And so this is another way that I kind of visualize these network layers and the different components that come together, and I'll make sure to share these slides later. Sorry that I got to rush through these, but at the end of the day, once you decide that any of this is a good idea and trying to combine this kind of network stack, how do you actually start operationalizing it? And first you have to figure out a scale, a focus, who is actually going to be doing the initial lift, and where is the seed funding coming from? And once you think through some of these questions, that's where it comes up in what in my mind is a decentralized research center. Or it's that network layer of the networks of all of the relevant researchers, the community network layer, the learning network, any kind of media advocacy kind of networks that need to be built, the funding network layer, the operational network layer, and architecture. And on the architecture side, that can be sort of communication architecture, information architecture, or actual decision-making architecture. I'm sure we've all used Snapshot here at some point or other. All right, what are the actual mechanisms and tools we're using for these? And in each one of these networks, realistically, very frequently, unless they're organized by the same people, they will have different architecture. So unless there's a coordination effort to bring people onto similar tooling, how do we actually have research coming out of one space coordinating with research coming out of another? And realistically, it's just culture and the technical convenience of interaction that drive that kind of interaction unless someone is thoughtfully building this across all of these networks. And so what does all this come together for in the context of Web3 research and building out a wider knowledge ecosystem? So the way we're looking at this is this idea of having a variety of different decentralized research centers which encapsulate what I was showing as that layered network approach that, the intellectual layer, the social layer, the funding layer, the ops layer. So each one of these decentralized research centers would capture that entire network stack 4 focused topics. So imagine one of these for governance, one of these for cryptography, one of these for security, one of these for scaling, for consensus, for all the core building blocks of what it takes to actually build and improve Web3. And in addition to that, you need some meta layers, right? Because review and publication can exist in each single domain, but is that actually better or worse than having meta layers? And we don't know the answers to that, but we definitely want to work with a bunch more folks to experiment across these and get a better sense of how it might look. And what Scurf is very much focused on is actually building this meta-level knowledge layer. And how can we actually incentivize groups to want to contribute information from their individual topic domains into a single repository that doesn't try to own anything or control anything, but that way people can know that, hey, you can jump to Scurf to see what's coming up in research around all kinds of different topic areas. And so to give a concrete example, and this QR code is to the Telegram group that we just created, so if you actually want to be part of learning more about the DAO Research Hub as we're getting it off the ground, please feel free to jump into our Telegram group. But here we're specifically focusing, what does a decentralized research center on DAOs and governance look like? Right, so it's going to focus on Web3 and that specific topic of DAOs and governance. We're going to build a network between universities, between industry, between independent researchers. We're going to hire a postdoc and fellow layer and embed them at universities to build those bridges. And we're going to work on all of the general infrastructure necessary to be able to make this kind of ecosystem operational in the first place. And the reason Scurf is very excited to work with other organizations to get this accomplished is because of the fact that, again, in that previous slide, we think governance is but one of many of these that need to exist. And right now, the way we're mapping it is there need to at least be 9, but it could be many more. We have no clue. This will only come out as we actually start working with different groups to build these kind of networks together. So we're very excited to collaborate with DAO Research Co-op and with MetaGov to actually see what it could look like. And so, in general, the way Scurf is thinking about this is the fact that we've been working for a year and some change at this point on building that meta-level information architecture via our forum, via our GitHub. We've been actively building a community to span across all of the individual communities for anyone who wants to talk about research, who wants to potentially get grants around producing more research, whether primary or summarizing existing research. And we now kind of want to split our focus into being across Web3 networks, so at that meta layer, but also diving really deep in individual topic areas, with the first example of that deep one really being around the DAO Research Hub and delving more into DAOs and governance. And I have a whole bunch more that I can mention about the specific stuff we're working on at Scurf. I'm going to be hitting time soon, so I'm not going to get a chance to. But yeah, we're really excited to support building out this DAO Research Hub initially for governance, and then replicating this. Security is the next topic we're really excited on. Happy to mention how that fits into some other projects that we're working on. But again, we're not going to pretend to know the answers to a lot of the things that we're posing. And we think that anyone who's telling you, hey, we solved research, or we solved science, or we fixed Web3, is probably blowing smoke up somewhere. So we're of the fundamental belief that the only honest answer that we can give to any of these questions is, I don't know, let's experiment and figure it out together. And so we're really excited to get to work with many more organizations to try to run targeted experimentation around supporting research and how to actually maximize the amount of outputs that come out of any research institution and the actual application they have with organizations building. And then we're running a whole separate open peer review project. If you're doing governance research and you have some kind of output coming out soon that you want a free peer review for, let us know. We're exploring that right now of how to give that as a free public service to organizations. But yeah, this is just kind of the wrap-up slide with this is how we're seeing the initial starting point. We want to start the DAO Research Hub, slowly expand to decentralized research centers across many different topic areas. We're currently doing an open peer review experiment. We are interested in seeing what happens with more Web3 publications. We are not taking a concrete stance on it yet. And then all of this bottom meta-level knowledge network is the stuff that Scurf does in our day-to-day operations. So sorry that I kind of started, then had to speed through the PowerPoint. Sorry if that was disjointing. But if you do want to directly jump into the Discord of Scurf, the Smart Contract Research Forum community, please jump in. There's our site. There's my Twitter and our organizational Twitter. Always happy to talk about either DAO research or overall research for Web3. I'm assuming I'm at time, though, so I'm going to go ahead and stop there. But yeah, thank you all for taking the time.
You do have USB-C, but is it just power or is it data as well? USB-C
I have no idea, sir.
Mic test. Green button. Voila. All right. So my name is Pat Rawson. I am the co-founder of Curve Labs, and we are one of the organizations currently engaged in PrimeDAO. PrimeDAO is sort of a DAO of DAOs, if you will, although I would not call Curve Labs a DAO. We are an incorporated business in Germany, and we kind of play by the compliance rules as such. So today I'm going to talk about Web3 control networks, which you can also think of as ownership networks. You can think of them as relations of ownership between different entities, especially in the corporate world. Although in the cryptocurrency world, we see a lot of small token holders who have very small pieces of the network through their governance tokens. Now, this is actually a very important topic to approach with cryptocurrency and Web3 in general because DAOs are programmable organizations. And as such, they allow us to do much more interesting things with ownership than you might see in the traditional world and the traditional legal structures around equity and ownership. When we're dealing with ownership in the DAO world and we're quantizing what ownership is, we're dealing with a couple of object primitives, as I like to call them. We're dealing with transferable tokens, which you understand as governance tokens, and they could be regulated in the sense that there's some sort of backdoor, like a USDC. They could also be just normal tokens, as we understand them. We're also dealing with reputation or point scoring, or these values that you assign to a particular address that belong to that address and that address alone. What we have not done in kind of the Web3 world, which I would think would be a very fun place to explore, is this one person, one vote style mechanism where simply by having an address, you have a vote in an organization. This is how most cooperatives in the real world, quote unquote, are structured, and I would like to see more of that here, ideally. There's some key relationships in control networks. I don't want to jump too much into this because it's a 20-minute talk, and I thought it was 30 minutes. But you can see on this next slide what Toyota's control network looks like. So with Toyota, we are dealing with somewhere close to 150 different entities that have co-ownership relations in each other. And this is incredible. We do not see this level of complexity anywhere in the Web3 space today, even with your biggest DAOs. So from my perspective, we actually have a challenge here, and we have a provocation to begin to create more complex co-ownership relations. And the argument that I want to put forth here is that this would be good for the space overall. This would help cement us as crypto institutional actors in a field of primarily hostile actors to ourselves when we look at the state and we look at traditional finance and so forth. yeah, if you want to really dive into this, which I recommend you do, I cannot show this paper enough. Global ownership and corporate control networks. Please take a look. They analyze how business works on a global scale and who owns who exactly. We already discussed this. There's one thing that I want to point out, which is a key characteristic of the world's global ownership network, and that is there is a large connected component at the center of it that primarily consists of financial institutions that all co-own each other. So when you are dealing with a JP Morgan or a Commerce Bank or any one of these financial actors, you're actually more likely to be dealing with a sort of super organism or a super entity where more than 75% of its ownership belongs to these other financial actors. So there is a tightly recursive nexus of ownership relations existing at the very core of the institutional structures of our world. And this super entity controls most of the liquidity, most of the entities, and arguably, I would say, most of the power in this day and age. And jumping into the numbers some more, we can see it's obscured by the plants over here. But if we see the top 20 entities, we can see cumulatively they own about 27% of the ownership in existence today in business. And I find this number to be extremely problematic. I don't think this number should be as high as it is. And again, I feel a provocation here, whereas Web3 folks, as people playing in a new institutional space, we can challenge this number, and we should challenge this number. We should aim to decentralize this 27%. We should not let the majority of the power over liquidity and finance in this world exist with these 20 entities, because they do not have our best interests in mind. So how can we build better control networks in Web3? How do we answer this provocation? We'll start by looking at one that exists today, and this is kind of a mock of Uniswap's control network. You can see here there are a handful of VC that control about 18% of the network, which is substantial in my opinion. Like I mentioned before, there's a number of small token holders. And recently, or not recently, but about a year ago, there was a bit of a spin out from Uniswap, a smaller organization called Uniswap Grants that they pushed outside of themselves. And I think that's good. If we want to approach complexity, we need to introduce a system of organizations that can attenuate complexity effectively. Now, going to the side here for a second, if we want to do this effectively, we need to sort of play into the second future, which I'm trying to articulate here. Because going back to Uniswap, this 18% controlled by VC, if those dynamics are taken to an extreme, we can see that there is a narrative here where most of what we do is just going to be subsumed by traditional finance. This large connected component of financial institutions, they're simply going to own most of the DAOs that we build because they're the ones who put the most money in the token sale and buy all the governance tokens. And I think we should strive to avoid that. Now, I'm not a maximalist. I understand the practicalities of finance. And if you need to raise money, yes, you're going to go to Andreessen Horowitz or what have you, and you're going to go raise some money. But should 18% of the #1 decentralized exchange protocol in our in Web3, should that be owned by VC or traditional financial actors? I would say probably not, or you need to have some sort of counterbalancing force. So my argument here is we need a DAO native control network. We need to be moving liquidity and ownership between DAOs and start building an institutional nexus of our own. And that is the second future I'm trying to articulate here. So if we take our previous example of Uniswap, we fall into this thesis and we play to this provocation. We can see that Uniswap can do a lot more work in spinning out more sub-DAOs and spinning out more joint ventures with other DAOs, in assigning ownership to other DAOs in 18% or excess of 18% in order to counteract these centralized votes or this centralized ownership by these particular financial actors. And I think here we are now beginning to approach something that resembles the complexity that you might see in Toyota's control network. Granted, here we're still only seeing something like 11 entities plus small token holders. That's a far cry from 150 entities, but it is a much better start. So continuing to focus on future 2, beyond this example, we have a number of questions that we need to kind of explore. How do we distribute ownership effectively? What tools exist for these purposes? What tools do we need, and what tools can we imagine? And while we have quite a number of DAO tools that exist today, we have very few DAO tools that exist solely to answer this question of DAO to DAO interactions in assigning ownership from DAO 1 to DAO 2 in a streamlined, sophisticated manner. So what we went ahead and did as Curve Labs is we partnered with Block Science, who we love so dearly working with, and we explored this. And we published a DAO to DAO digest where we kind of discuss, OK, what are the tools that can conceivably exist? I encourage you to go online and check this out. And you can see that joint ventures, this exists in the real world. This shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. Community swaps, token swaps, this is how we distribute ownership between each other. Funding public goods, Gitcoin has been the major rallier of this, but we absolutely need to do this at a higher level across the space ubiquitously. And DAO mergers. So we have yet to see many DAO mergers. And I would argue that in our particular time in this industry, we have reached the point where mergers are absolutely necessary, and they offer benefits to both sides. So I would be very, very excited to see some of these big DAOs talk very openly about becoming even bigger DAOs, because this is how we are going to rival the current financial institutions that exist. So here is a speculative mapping that I put together of the types of DAO to DAO tooling that can exist. You can go ahead and explore this on your own. Like I said, it's in the article. Today, we're going to focus on only one of these tools that Curve Labs has been building in partnership with ByteRocket and PrimeDAO and Collectivo Labs and so many other folks. And that is negotiation interfaces and protocols that help accelerate mergers, acquisitions, and trade, what we call DAO to DAO interfaces. And we have created the PrimeDeals application for your pleasure. This was over a year-long development effort, from research and specification to smart contracts, to audit, to product, the whole spiel. And in 4 to 6 weeks, this will be live for your DAOs to trade with each other. Thank you. There was a lot of workshops on those sprints. So enter PrimeDeals. PrimeDeals is an interface for DAO to DAO interactions, such as token swaps, co-liquidity provision, and joint venture formation. For version 1, we are just doing token swaps. There's a very big area to explore, and we went with the one feature that we think is the most critical feature for building co-ownership relations between DAOs. Deals will launch mid-May, as I mentioned. And I wanted to offer some final theory as to why token swaps especially are important. Why is this critical? When you have multiple liquidity sources, you increase your odds of long-term survival. So if DAO 1 crashes but DAO 2 doesn't crash, and I have tokens from DAO 1 and DAO 2, well, guess what? I can liquidate DAO 2 to survive the bear market, because DAO 1 isn't worth anything anyway. So we increase the odds of our collective memory perpetuating itself. The individual shareholder is driven by greed, the network by growth. And I truly believe that co-ownership mediates this tension. Co-ownership sits nicely in the middle, and it helps stop this sort of aggressive crypto tribalism from putting itself forward. We should not have these competitive discourses about, oh, my coin is better than yours, or your token sucks. If we all own each other's tokens, we all support each other. We all have the co-incentives to work together as a controlled network. And you can see on the right-hand side here the number of relations that are possible between DAOs. There's a scaling property here that is extremely important. Each of those relations represent personnel, they represent capital, they represent information ecology, and to have more and more relations means that an ecosystem can truly flourish and be resilient to exogenous shocks. So we're going to throw the dice here and hope that the staging app works. Oh no! Oh geez. You got to be careful about doing these types of things. All right. So welcome to Prime Deals, or our Vercel staging instance of Prime Deals. Web3 partnerships made easy. So if we go to, and I'm going to give you just a very brief tour of this. There was a deal session yesterday. I don't need to dive into this. So when we view all deals, here we can see the deals that DAOs want to make with each other. VitaDAO token swap. They've created an open proposal to swap 50 to 500K worth of Vita with an aligned project. That's very exciting. I want to know more about that. So we click into the deal. The first clause of the deal is just they might need to work on their presentation there, but I get the essence of what they're trying to do. I see make an offer, and I see a discussion section. Well, I could discuss here, and I could say, listen, I want some more clarity on this clause, because it looks like gibberish. Or I can go here, and I can make an offer. What I can also do is I can take this particular deal, and I can fork it, and I can create another deal with the exact same properties. I'm going to click Cancel, and I'm going to go back to Home here. So we have these open deals here. If we go to partnered deals, we can see the active process of negotiation between two DAOs, the Floresta DAO and the Clemati DAO. Who did the QA on this? So there's a description of the deal. There's clauses for the deal. There are votes. So each DAO has certain representatives who are responsible for the deal. And I only have 2 minutes left. I'm not going to dive too much more into this, but you can see that this is actually going to be a very useful tool. We use an escrow smart contract flow so that when the token swap occurs, it is done trustlessly, it is done on-chain, and you don't have to worry about your funds. Funds are safe and what have you. So going back to my deck and just wrapping things up, I wanted to end by giving a shout out to the Proposal Inverter team. This is another team which is actually yes. There's dozens of you. But this is another team that's practicing DAO to DAO. They've gone to 3 or 4 DAOs. They've structured the Proposal Inverter as a joint venture between DAOs, and they've been able to raise funding and build a cross-DAO team to build a necessary DAO to DAO primitive. And this is exactly what we need to see. This is exactly the type of acceleration which is going to push our DAO to DAO ecosystem forward and create the crypto institutional control network that I would like to see, and I hope you would like to see as well. Thank you.
Button. Test. Good. All right, wonderful. So I was told that there's no break in between. Sorry about that. So we're going to go back-to-back presentations. And I don't have any slides. Actually, I thought I was in a Whitehall with a whiteboard, so I was going to use a whiteboard. But who needs slides if we can just all focus on me and on the things I'm going to talk about? So today I'm going to talk about the incentivized L2. So I want to set the expectation of this particular presentation here. So I'm not going to sell Metis, okay? So I don't think I need to sell it. I'm not going to sell any products. But really, I want to tell everyone the journey of Metis, how Metis is using Metis token as an incentivized tool to increase the adoption of L2. And the technical challenges we have faced, the solution we implemented, and the ongoing challenges we're having right now as an infrastructure DAO and a community-driven community-driven infrastructure and going forward. Hopefully this talk will give some ideas, some experience, and some lessons we learned. So when you start out a new infrastructure DAO, you won't repeat the same mistake, or you can even innovate further based on what we learned. So first, how Metis was established. So when Metis was first founded, we didn't start out with a layer 2. So layer 2 was actually not the first mission we had. The first mission we had is to promote this online and on-chain collaboration. So we found a lot of DAOs previous years were focusing so much on voting, so much on treasury management, but not so much on the business activities. There are a lot of things that business has to do, daily operations, including internal transactions, transactions across DAOs, across different entities, basically, financial and non-financial, project delivery, all those things. Those are not really captured in the older DAO framework. Well, that's iterative development, right? So I understand that. So when we were looking at the DAO ecosystem, say, hey, there's a space we can get in. We can introduce more framework to promote on-chain business activities so that actual economic activity can happen on-chain more and replace the off-chain entities and all legal entities that we had to deal with the government and centralized power. Now, the problem quickly arises when we start to implementing that framework is that we don't have a strong enough infrastructure to support inexpensive and fast operations that businesses rely on every day in order to make their business model viable. And that's why Metis started out with a DAO vision, but we also start to focus on a layer 2 solution. So one biggest question we faced back then is, hey, how are we going to increase and promote the adoption of a layer 2 solution? Because there are so many layer 2 there. The first question we had, that investors asked us and the community asked us, hey, this space is saturated. How are you going to compete with us? Well, incentivization is a very powerful tool. So when Metis token was invented, we had a very, very, very thorough discussion whether we're going to use Metis as a gas payment token on Metis network. So that was actually a hard debate. You can hear opinions from different sides. For example, right now, Optimum and Arbitron, they use Ether to pay the gas fees. And on Metis, we use Metis. The reason why we decide to use Metis is actually you can actually find evidence nowadays with adoption and fast adoption of Andromeda, is that when people get into this ecosystem by purchasing Metis tokens, they're more incentivized to use your network. Because the more transactions they use, the more successful the ecosystem projects they become, the whole value of Metis token also increase alongside. So they're actually incentivized to participate in ecosystem projects, to participate in building the layer 2 together. So that's the first thing we noticed when we start an infrastructure level DAO, which requires a very complex protocol and requires some very good adoption in order to be successful. A incentivized token mechanism is actually a must-have. So that's the first lesson we learned. The second that we found that actually it's very complicated to use Metis token as a gas payment token. Let me tell you why the complication is. For a layer 2, there are a lot of factors, components in this payment. First, you need to incur some gas cost because it's a roll-up, so you have to roll the data up to layer 1. Layer 1 is not cheap. So you have to incur actual gas costs in Ether to make your layer 2 work. That, again, that's not Metis token. So we somehow have to have a way so that periodically we collect the Metis token and we swap the Metis to Ether, and then we can replenish the DAO treasury that way. Then how much do we charge for our transactions? That's the second challenge we faced, because Metis token price changes every day. You can look at the price chart of Metis. It's actually going quite crazy, up and down, up and down. And how are you going to react to the ever-changing price of Metis token in relation to Ether? That's the first changing component. The second changing component is the L1 gas fee changes every day dramatically, just like a Metis chart. So it's just every day in the morning it can be very low, and in the afternoon it can be very high, even to like 200 green. So how do we react to this ever-changing L1 gas cost we have to incur as an infrastructure in order to make L2 work? So in the end, we found a rigid mathematical formula may not cut the deal. So what we end up with is a more treasury-based formula. So what we're trying to do is we average out a weekly treasury spending, and then look at the treasury income. And we look at the online on-chain activities and see how many transactions are going, and predict if there's any big launches going on in the next week. With that prediction, we try to find and predict a gas price that is suitable for a reasonable profit margin for the DAO. Again, DAO still needs some profit margin in the gas collection so that they can continue develop, continue innovate. But this is I would say this is actually a very cutting edge prediction algorithm that we implement. And hopefully it can be done more decentralized way in the future, and that's what we're hoping to achieve going forward when we fully decentralize the infrastructure DAO for Metis. That's the second thing I want to highlight. So if anyone wants to start a new layer 2 with a token, happy to talk about it. There are many headaches you have to go through in order to make it work, but it will definitely work. So the third thing we noticed, because as a DAO, you definitely need some consensus within the community, because your community needs to participate how the direction of innovation going, what things our team needs to focus on in order to improve the infrastructure. In our case, it's Metis Andromeda layer 2 solution. So there needs to be some voting or consensus mechanism. Very easily, I would say the first approach that everyone will take is, hey, let's just use Metis token as a voting token. Actually, the team is actually doing snapshots votings recently. We recently introduced a community ecosystem program. So the community start to doing the ecosystem project vetting instead of the Metis team doing that. So that uses Metis as a snapshot voting token. But the problem arises. I think everyone is quite familiar with the challenges and problems with voting tokens, especially in Metis' case. It is actually a utility token in a way, because you use that to pay the gas. But if you use that also to do the voting, then it's a dilemma. Hey, what should I use? Like, is it going to be used for voting? Is it going to be used for paying the gas? So a very common strategy, and the kind of strategy that we're going to use in Metis is to use the staking mechanism, where you can stake the Metis, and then you get the voting token from the staking emission. So that is a way that we can ensure a long-term community members and well-invested community members have more voting powers for those infrastructure proposals. So the very important thing I do want to highlight is for infrastructure DAO, and the decision can make huge impact. For example, right now TVL for Metis Andromeda is around $400 million. I think the highest point that we ever reached was close to $1 billion US dollars. So that was a lot of money on the line. So if the first question I was asked, hey, is it safe to actually give the infrastructure level decision to a DAO, to a community? It is very debatable. It is definitely a vector of the attack. So anyone can somehow get a very high voting power and change how the infrastructure works, or even deploy a new smart contract, which is has some loopholes where it can be take advantage by the hackers. Actually, there was a recent hack Beanstalker, I think, is the project, was hacked in that way. So they deploy a smart contract using the DAO infrastructure, and there was a loophole in a smart contract, so that they actually lose quite a lot, actually 100 million, more than 100 million US dollars. So it is actually very dangerous to directly give the community the control on the infrastructure. But there's a very interesting characteristic of a optimistic rollup. That's what Metis is there's a 7-day finality window. So once a consensus has been reached by a voting from the DAO, if the infrastructure DAO needs to change anything that impacts the infrastructure as a whole, they need to actually finalize it on layer 1. That finalization window is right now set to 7 days. So this delay actually helps the community to censor itself, in a way, to basically correct if there's anything wrong with any questionable behavior. During those 7 days, there's actually a mechanism that you can freeze a particular proposal. So it's actually a very, very interesting characteristic of optimistic rollup. You can actually freeze one particular state. So this state cannot be relayed to L1, meaning that that proposal that you want to, so the proposal about changing the infrastructure actually cannot be relayed to L1 if the DAO decide to freeze that particular proposal. So the mechanism is actually there to kind of safeguard the infrastructure DAO, so that the community or a dishonest member of that community cannot harm the infrastructure as a whole that easily. But still, that's a vector of attack that is a hot topic, and we continue research. So for anyone that would like to run a very big protocol with a lot of TVLs in it, and if you gave the decision to a DAO, you have to deal with the situation. So this is a very important thing that I do want to highlight, and something that we learned when working on Metis. So yeah, so this is actually the main topic I want to talk about. I do want to leave the last 5 minutes for any questions you may have.
Here. Right there.
I'm just curious to learn more about, given the security risk that you have highlighted just now, has it always been the decision to make it a DAO to govern the infrastructure, or was that like what actually motivated you to take that risk despite that's obvious concerns?
Yeah. Just like I said, the history of Metis is we started out with a decentralized collaboration. So the Metis is also run in this way. So we want to make sure that we are not the only one that controls the infrastructure. Actually, so I talked to many people. I said, honestly, I do not want to be the one operating our layer 2 node at all. I do not want that. That should be in the community. That should be decentralized. I do not want to have that superpower to control billions of TVL. That's not what I want. So that's the overall vision that we have. But again, there are definitely a lot of things that we have to be very careful when giving the community. Again, it's a trustless community. So there can be some bad players in the community. I hope there are not, but there can be. And for us to prepare our tech stack, our processes, and the whole voting infrastructure for those unfortunate events is what we're trying to focus on.
Any other question?
Great. Thank you very much.
Hey, all right. Hello, we're EPNS, and we are the world's first communication protocol for the Web3. And today we're here to talk about foundational DAO infrastructure tools. So first of all, before we move forward, I wanted to tell you a little bit about me. My name is Jeff. I run business development and operations at EPNS. And you know, I've been working for almost 20 years now, but only like the past 3-4 years in the Web3 space. And a fun fact, my team used to tease me saying that I'm the Vin Diesel of crypto, right? All right, so let's get into what we're here to talk about today. Why DAO infrastructure? The thing is, when you start thinking about DAOs, it's at the end, we keep saying it here and we keep seeing it here. It's all about organizing things. It's all about making sure that everything and everyone is working together in a good way. And one of the things that happens with governance is that governance happens in too many places right now. It happens most likely if you participate in any governance, in any project, most likely you are part of a Discord, a discourse, snapshot, and we can continue saying different platforms and tools, and that's the thing. Governance happens in too many places right now. And governance is more than just information sharing, as we say it here, because when you start thinking about the average user, you start realizing that for the average user, governance is about voting. They don't really know what's behind voting, right? And there are so many things. There's treasury management, there's voting reputation, discussion. There are too many things that happens with governance that the average user sometimes don't see it. They see the proposal at the end, and when it comes to voting. And the last part is that it leads to critical decisions with low-quality voting. Low-quality voting meaning, for example, that when a person goes to cast their vote, they might not have all the information, they might not have read all the information, or maybe they haven't even seen the proposal before, know anything about it before, but they can vote. So they can vote, they will affect the decision, and they will emit a vote just because they can, right? So that is what I mean with critical decisions with low-quality voting. And let's move forward. Oh. This picture, I like it because it really reflects everything that happens with a DAO. So that's what I was saying. It's a ton of things that happens. And most likely, as I was saying, you are participating or using or being a user of some of this. But there are too many things that happens. And it's all about how you organize the information, how you share the information to make sure that everybody is at all times communicated about what's happening, right? So the solution, get ready for this one. There is no solution. There is no one-size-fits-all solution, right? There is not. The main reason is because independently of which DAO you belong to or which DAO you participate in, and independently if you're talking about a protocol DAO or a service DAO or whatever, the fact is that even if you are an expert, let's pick one of them, let's say protocol DAOs, and let's say you are a very, very active user in Maker. Even if you're a very active user, you are very, very participating in everything that happens there. You move to another protocol, let's say Sushi, and then you might feel lost because at the end, it's DAO collaboration is rather than only the tooling behind it, it's the people. It's the people that makes the decisions, it's the people that actually have different practices, and it's the people that will make the difference on how the DAO runs. So what are we doing to help with this? We are creating the native Web3 communication protocol. And what we are building is the opportunity for DAOs to create communication channels with their participants so that everybody can stay aware of everything that is happening. Maybe, if you have been in the space for a few years, you remember the Save Yam hashtag that was everywhere in Twitter like a couple of years ago. And it was a great effort. It was a great effort. But was it effective? Like everybody was posting Save Yam on Twitter and other social channels. But what we're bringing is the opportunity to create direct communication channels with the participants of your DAO so that information goes directly to you and information flows to you. Sometimes I think, all of us, because crypto is so cool, we used to go to the different platforms. We tend to go to the different platforms 10 or 20 times a day just because it's cool. Everybody likes, visiting them. But we forget that we are used to information flowing to us and not us having to go fetch the information. We are expecting, all of us, whenever we get a WhatsApp message or something, we just take a look and that's it, right? It should be like that for crypto. It's just that it's so cool that we are used to visiting those platforms, but in reality, the information should flow to us. And that's what we are building with EPNS, right? We are creating notifications that can have a lot of information in it. It's not only like text that will be sent to you, but it's everything that you want to send. We are content independent, and we have been working in collaboration with many different protocols and teams in the space. And for example, for governance specifically, we have seen many really great use cases. One of them being, for example, whenever there is a new proposal up for voting, then you will get a notification right to your phone saying, hey, there is this proposal. You can read it right there. And you can also send reminders to your users so that they know that the proposal is about to finish in 24 hours, let's say. But even more cool than that is that very soon we are going to enable the opportunity to cast your vote from the notification itself. So you might be reading the proposal, you will understand everything that is happening in there, and you will be able to cast your vote. So most likely you will get the 3 buttons, like for, against, and abstain. And if you want to interface a little bit more into the discussion or get more involved in the discussion, then you click the notification and it takes you to Discourse, or it will take you to Discord or wherever discussion is happening for that specific proposal. But the fact is that EPNS becomes a tool for user engagement in the governance process. And that's where the power behind EPNS is. We are lucky that we have been working with many protocols that are wanting to move governance with EPNS. And we keep seeing a lot of different use cases that they are coming with. And even getting a notification when the voting results are done, it's super meaningful because even if you didn't have the opportunity to vote, you at least are going to be aware of everything that is happening with your project that you are involved with. And that's where EPNS makes a difference, right? And yeah, we are talking about, I did mention this, it's not only text that will get to you, but you can send, for example, a live stream in YouTube. Let's say you want to make a town hall meeting, you want to share a really important message, you can do it like that. You will get it on your phone, you will start seeing the live stream. So it's more than text that will get to you. This one I wanted to show you how notifications look like really quick. There is no sound, I'm sorry, but this is how notifications look like in our mobile app. That's okay. It's okay. The last 20 seconds. All right, that was a quick one just for everybody to know how notifications look like. One of the cool things is that we have SDKs, we have a mobile app in the 2 flavors, iOS and Android. We have a Chrome browser extension, and whoever wants to implement notifications on their own dApps, for example, they can do it through our SDKs. It's super simple, and of course we have our developers ready to jump in and assist if anybody needs to make an implementation, right? Now, a few more things. In our DAOification process that we are running right now with EPNS, we just started last quarter with our push grants program. There is $1 million allocated for, it's going to run for 2 quarters. There is $1 million allocated for this. And it's all about spreading awareness about EPNS. So for example, if you are wanting to spread awareness by creating educational material, you can do that. If you're a developer wanting to create something cool on top of our protocol, you can do that. There's always grants, integrations, and everything. We are enabling different channels for people to come in, participate, ask questions. We have office hours. We have our Discord, which is always full of good conversation going on. So if you have any idea or if you have any questions, reach out to us because our program is going to be running until the end of this quarter. And there's a lot of activity going on. So make sure to take a look. And if you have any questions, let me know. The other thing is we're hiring. So we're hiring for different positions right now. We're looking for developers. We are looking for business development people. And there are many opportunities that we have right now that we are looking to hire. And one of the things I forgot to mention is for the hackathon happening this weekend, we have bounties up and running. So for the developers as well, that's pretty great news. And that's it. If anybody have any question, now it's the time. But yeah, thank you.
It's working.
Which services do you have already integrated? Not just Safe or Aragon. Do you have already notifications when there are new votes?
Can you repeat again? I couldn't hear well.
Okay. I was wondering if there is already an integration for Gnosis Safe or Aragon.
For Gnosis Safe, right now we don't have like a channel up and running, right? But we do have integrations with other tooling in the DAO space, like Snapshot, and we do have those ready. But that's the thing. What we're building is a protocol that allow people and projects and developers to build solutions on top of our protocol.
Okay, that's perfect.
Yeah, yeah. We have SDKs and everything in case you're a developer.
I am. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Anyone else? No?
All right, thank you so much. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. We will be more than happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
We have 10 minutes to the next speaker. So if you need a break, take it now.
Hi, guys. Let's restart the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Appreciate your help. All right. What's up, DAO stars? Let's do this. We're starting 2 minutes ahead of scheduled time. Let's bring it in. Here we go. Good to see some familiar friends in the third row. All right. Soon, I will have slides up, and we'll get this thing going. There we go. All right. We got a slide. Hey, everybody. Thank you for coming to this talk. I'm going to talk a little bit about compensation at Yearn Finance. In some ways, I would say we are constantly iterating on everything at Yearn, but compensation has been a particular focus area in recent months, and we're actually kind of in the thick of it in doing some compensation, some pretty major compensation changes. So wanted to share with y'all kind of where we're at, what we've learned, and where we're going. So to set the stage for this, I will, let's see. Okay, so we're looking at the wrong screen of my machine. I'm thankful that it's not something else that's showing up there right now. It's just a little bit of governance, but if possible, do I need to do something different? Yeah, let's do it. We're doing it live, guys. We're doing it. Let's see. And I could just, oh. Okay, and we're back. Just gave a couple of moments for more folks to come in the room. All right. So to set the stage for this this rousing discussion of compensation, I thought I'd give just a little bit of context about the different categories of contributing at Yearn. And I should note for the record that I'm now doing this without my speaker notes, so please lower expectations a couple of clicks. So we tend to think of contributing at Yearn in these four sort of tiers. For starters, anybody can come contribute to Yearn, right? Go into the GitHub, get after that pull request, write an article, whatever it is, however you want to jump in anywhere you care to. Anybody can come contribute at Yearn, and many do. Oftentimes those things are not compensated. Other times there's a one-off bounty or a grant, and there's all kinds of ways to contribute. And then the more you contribute, the more impact you have, the more trust you build, the more you move through these levels. So above that sort of entry point is the point that's actually got the most active people in it today, about 100 people or so that are contributors or quote unquote casual contributors to Yearn. And these could be folks that spend a couple of hours a month on Yearn, or a little bit of time every single day. They might come in and come out in a schedule or a cadence that works for them, and we're stoked and really lucky to have them contributing. The next tier, there's probably a better name than trusted contributor. Maybe it's like even more trusted contributor. But these are folks that are getting into it more and more. Maybe they're rugging their day job because of all the time they're putting in at Yearn, or they're going to come in for a fixed period of time and work on a project or something like that. And so they sort of get into this next tier where they're operating on more of maybe like a contractor kind of basis. And then ultimately the sort of pinnacle of trust and responsibility is doers, which is essentially our name for core team. This one breaks it down just with a little bit more detail about each one of those levels. I won't get into all of this stuff, but from a compensation perspective, I mentioned folks in the entry level might get a bounty or a one-off or one-time grant. When you're in that contributor level, which again is sort of the biggest group today, it's anywhere from say 70 to 100 people depending on the month. they're paid via a coordinate circle, which I'll talk a little bit about later in the presentation. But if you don't know coordinate, get to know coordinate. But a tool for DAO compensation that was incubated within Yearn, but then spun out and is used by a number of DAOs today as a way to facilitate contributor-led comp, so get paid in whatever tokens are set aside for that compensation by the DAO, with the amount that you're paid is determined by your peers. So we use Coordinate for that level of contributors at Yearn. And for trusted contributors, we typically move, there's no standard for this at this point, but people could move into grants of some kind, maybe each month to supplement what they're getting in Coordinate, or you might move to something like, for X number of months, you'll get Y amount of dollars, so you have some stability in compensation to contribute on a project. And then doers, our core team, up until recently, and I'll talk about this in a moment, but up until recently, the compensation for our core team was a combination of a monthly recurring grant paid in stables, and then vesting Y fee. So our token is Y fee, and then historically our vesting packages have looked not unlike restricted stock units might look at a startup or a tech company. A 3-year vest with a 6-month cliff. Yay. Okay. So digging in on core team comp, which is something we've been putting a lot of time in on recent months, and what I'm here to talk about, it's important to set the stage for this to go back actually to January of 2021, which feels like eons ago. This is a point in time known as the Mint. If you're familiar with Yearn lore, this was the Mint. It was controversial, to say the least. The proposal, in essence, said, hey, there are 30,000 Y-Fi today. We should just go ahead and mint 6,666 more of them, primarily to cover compensation for the team. One, to make some folks whole that have been grinding on the project for some time with little to no compensation, but then the biggest chunk to go towards being able to fund the team on an ongoing basis. Obviously, all kinds of fun dynamics to that, and it had rousing rounds of conversation. And I don't remember if this was in my speaker notes or in the next slide, but no. So that one, but it passed by an overwhelming majority. So I think it was like 83% or something like that. I'll go back for 1 sec. So this. This proposal to essentially dilute token holders in a pretty significant way to fund the team passed by 83% of folks voting yes. Kind of amazing, and I think given the fair launch origin of Yearn, it's an interesting case study in what can happen when a team grinds on something for a long period of time, establishes trust from the community, and then asks for, hey, this is an ongoing concern. Let's fund it as such. And so that happened, and that's cool, and that brought us to the compensation that we had, let's say, circa 2021, or up until pretty recently, it looked like this. We had a variety of Y-Fi grant types. So some of the folks, the folks that had been around, the OG folks had grants that looked more like what might look like a founder grant for a startup, right? And you had folks that came in, more recently that had grants of varying sizes. The same kind of dynamics you see in all kinds of organizations, right? People that have been around might be paid different than other people. They might have lower salaries and more stock and all these kinds of things, right? But we also had some sort of one-off things. People that had like one-time grants of a large amount meant to cover past and future work. It was just kind of inconsistent, as many of you may see in your organizations. And we only had our strategists on variable compensation, meaning everybody on the team except for strategists. And strategists are the big brain, like developers / economists who are on call 24/7, ensuring that the yield is maximized and funds are safe across all of our vaults. So arguably the most crucial role at Yearn, and also justifiably by far the highest paid roles at Yearn, but the only ones historically that had any kind of variability to them, meaning those guys were making their income goes up and down uncapped based on the amount of fees that their vaults are generating. But nobody else at Yearn historically has been compensated in a variable way, meaning they just had a fixed salary and their Y fee. So, and there's no real process for changing compensation once it was set. So you have these sort of legacy issues, and it's kind of a one-off kind of tactical thing if you needed to go in and change somebody's comp. And because of that, every time we were onboarding somebody new to talk about their salary, or anytime a change was proposed, in Y People, which is the team that works on curating the team, we had a lot of philosophical discussions, right? Every single time somebody new is coming in, you start talking about, oh, how do we compensate tech versus non-tech talent? Well, this person lives in this market, which is expensive as fuck. Like, maybe we should adjust for that. Every single time somebody came in, right? And it's important and thoughtful and took up a hell of a lot of time. Also, with wifey grants came the understanding that, hey, we generally don't sell these things. And I would imagine many of you can relate. There's, when you're compensated in your protocol's token, it's generally the idea that you don't sell it if you don't have to, right? And you kind of hang on to it, which is cool and great from a sort of team cohesion perspective. Kind of unfair to folks that actually need access to funds to fund their day-to-day life and maybe haven't gotten to the level of self-tenure that others may have gotten to. So all of that, and we recently passed a governance proposal to really build in significant changes to tokenomics and wifey. So the legacy comp didn't take advantage of that. So we started in Q4 saying, hey, we want to take a look at compensation. And the best way to do this is to be transparent AF. And so what we did was we asked all doers, so all of our core team who wanted to opt in to working on compensation, we asked anybody who wanted to opt in to work on this to dox their comp. So in a Telegram group just for doers, and the vast majority of folks opted in. Everybody shared their comp. Now, you might imagine that drove some sensitive conversations, right? Compensation is a deeply personal thing. Even though everything is on chain in some way, it was not widely known what every other person was getting paid. So that caused, I wouldn't say a shitstorm, but some level of storm. A lot of really important, not always super chill conversations had to happen, right? That's like, OMG, that person is making that much, what the fuck? But on the other side, too, we uncovered people like, oh my God, this crucial person is only making this? Like, what the hell, I had no idea. And everything in between, right? Comparisons across teams and peoples and geographies and all those things. But nobody freaked out, nobody quit. The only thing that changed out of that was actually two people whose comp was just way below where it should have been. We collectively worked to adjust their comp while we worked on everything else sort of over the longer term. So a good start. Okay, so enter poor comp. So if you know or know of Tracheopteryx, sort of a long-time Yearn contributor and founder of Coordinape, he's written a document called Compensation 2.0, which is that's like the comp of the future. That's it's something that I think organizations can learn from and should aspire to. This is like poor man's compensation 2.0, which is kind of what we called it internally. But we think it's a good step along the way to a better way of doing compensation. So we, a bunch of us, authored a Yearn improvement proposal, a YIP, about it in January, proposing an overhaul to the system. And it also passed by a wide majority. And here's kind of what we had in mind when we designed this system. One, it's transparent AF. As mentioned, I think even though it can be super uncomfortable, once you rip off that Band-Aid for your organization, I think it only improves from there, and you get more and more comfortable with the uncomfortable. Two, we wanted to have a clean start, find a way to not have to keep on talking about, well, this person has sort of a founder's grant, or this person's on this weird package for this reason. Let's have something that's uniform and scalable. Three, let's find a way to be all in this together. Let's find a way to introduce variable compensation to everybody. Four, let's build something that can leverage new tokenomics, both the ones we know are coming, and ones that hopefully will come and be even more awesome in the future. And five, with flexibility built in, because not everybody's in the same economic position today as they may be a month from now, and people's ability to contribute might shift from quarter to quarter, and that's okay. So here is what we did. So first we established a rainy day fund. And this was big, and I recognize that Yearn is in a place where we can afford to do this, and that is it's a luxury that we don't take for granted. But we set aside enough of treasury to cover 18 or a little more, 18 plus months of a floor salary or a floor monthly recurring grant for the entire core team for up to 18 months. So if we were to get to such a dire place where there was zero profit for 18 months, we could still keep the team going. And so as part of being all in this together is like, yeah, it's really great to have the idea of shared upside, but shared downside that could go to zero, probably not a great long-term strategy. So we wanted capped downside, but uncapped upside. So capped downside with a rainy day fund, which we don't expect to need to tap, but that's exactly why it's there, right? And then uncapped upside. So this is the big shift part, and I haven't figured out a way to visualize this really well yet, so sorry. There's words on the screen, but hear my words. We took a fixed percentage of net income, so 45% of net income. So the profit generated from fees from Yearn's, from the DeFi protocol, right? And then that piece, which is variable in nature, right? It'll look different every month based on the profits that are generated. But that 45%, no matter how big or small it is, that gets divided across the core team. Okay? Good. Thank you for the affirmative nod, sir. Okay. And then we went through a self-setting compensation exercise. So each person proposed their percentage of that pool, right? So let's just say there were 50 people. If you thought everybody should get the exact same thing, you would propose 2%, right? My piece is 2%. So we went through a process where everybody proposed. First round was blind, submitted to a collector. But then every other round was open. So each person submitted, this is the percentage I think I should get, and this is my motivation. We did this 2 months ago. So we all said, here's what I'm going to focus on in Q2. This is why it makes sense to get this much of a percentage, right? Aggregated all of that, and then shared it all out. Named names, shared numbers, right? A return to that exercise from Q4, but in a different way. And then we went through, the plan as outlined in the YIP is to go through until you get to 100% or until you reach 5 rounds, in which case there was a sort of breaking points if we didn't get there. But we got there. And this is underway right now, so I've got more to share. But so this started in Q2, meaning that the month that we're in right now, in April, is the first month we'll be compensated this way. So I literally don't know exactly what I'll get paid for April, and I'm excited about that. How are we on time? I can't see my thing. Cool. Thank you. Okay, so learning so far. One, we need to get better at feedback. I think compared to other organizations that I've worked at, I think Yearn's pretty good at this, but it was pretty clear when it took like seeing somebody's motivation for the next quarter for some people to be like, I'm not sure you've really been doing a great job on this. So this process was long, and it was at times painful and definitely uncomfortable, but really, really necessary. And it showed us that more and more we need to work to decouple the process of giving each other feedback, entering into conflict resolution if we need to, but just talking about this shit that everybody knows we should talk about and everybody knows is uncomfortable, but you got to air it out. So it was aired out, the good, the good, the bad, the ugly, but we know we need to get better at it. So to that point, the time investment required is big, right? This took a lot of time. I think time spent actively discussing, but then just time spent thinking about this stuff, right? Like you can put a heck of a lot of brain time into preparing what just that little blurb about your motivation for the next quarter should be. And then for those of us who were a part of the panel that facilitated this whole process, it was multi-hour calls every day for a couple of weeks to kind of get through it. So, and everybody was doing this in addition to their sort of, day-to-day roles. Super important, but you got to plan for it. And 3, meet people where they are, right? A lot of things you might put in the bucket of like, hey, this is going to change. Here's a write-up. It's on you to go read it and, self-serve and go do it, right? And a lot of things that's fair. In this one, in compensation, you just can't. There's too many assumptions. Quick drink of water. Too many assumptions. Too much baggage from past lives where people have just been, screwed over in comp at various organizations. And by the way, I worked for a couple of FANG companies. I've been screwed over in terms of compensation, my fair share as well. So I bring that baggage to my experience, right? But getting with people, making sure they really get it, making sure, seeing if they need help coming to what their percentage should be, seeing if something feels out of whack for them, just kind of letting them talk it through. So we were kind of became like compensation counselor, if not therapist, for a lot of folks to get through this process, and frankly, totally worth it. And it's impossible to fully separate from dollars. In the end, what we wanted people to get to, and what we got to, is a relative percentage, right? How much should I get paid relative to all of the other core team members at Yearn, right? But we're all humans. Like, you can't help but do the math, especially humans in crypto, right? We want to do the math. We want to game the shit out of that thing. We want to figure out how to optimize it, right? So we needed to just kind of embrace that, where we try to encourage folks, like, don't think about the numbers. Think about relative percentage, and it's all going to be great. We just had to get a little bit more real with ourselves. But maybe the biggest learning that I had, or that we had, is that this team was really capable of real talk. Like, for all of the things that I said, and they're true about the uncomfortable nature of all this stuff, I saw a ton of dialogue go down that was about people talking about, conversations that were going to impact what they get paid, impact their livelihood, right? Relative compensation of other teams, issues with historical decisions that were made, but done overall, honestly, in such a professional way that it inspired me to be better. Like, no BS. So I left those conversations and multiple times said to my wife, I was like, damn, I'm working with some really good people. And just to get to the numbers, so when I mentioned, so we started with a blind submission, right? Everybody put in their percentages, the goal of getting to 100. After the first round, we were at 119%. That was with no anything, right? Just blindly submitting, which I got to say is pretty good. I wouldn't have been shocked if we were at 200% and just had a lot of work to do, but perfect. And so we went through, it did take 5 rounds, but we got to actually 99 and change. And so that rolled out. April is the first month that we'll be compensated that way. So the learning has just begun. This is, I was stoked to give this talk here at this time because we're right in the thick of this and we really want to share everything, right? This is all out there. There's no alpha in this presentation, except that you really got to go read through a bunch of yips and other things to sort of pay attention. So we really want to be out there talking about this stuff, sharing and learning from all of you as you're going through this kind of stuff with your DAOs. So, get in touch after if you have questions, if you have learnings, especially if you guys are considering, different things. Let's work on this stuff together, right? This is an area where it behooves us as an ecosystem to just learn from each other. So the journey continues. We have a working group right now in the same style that many of us worked on comp for the core team are working on comp for contributors. So this is Yearn's coordinate circle from the last epoch, from last month, right? That's the visual. One benefit of Coordinape having been incubated within Yearn is that we get to work directly with the team on proposing and piloting new features. So, there's a social element to compensation, especially contributor or peer-determined compensation, right? You could tend to overcompensate the folks that are the most visible. The most humble folks might get shortchanged if you're not doing it right. So, working on some features to try to combat some of these dynamics. So, more to come on that. That's the end of this. I'm DeFi Ginger on Twitter. Hit me up there if you have any questions. Thank you so much. Cheers. DeFi Ginger, so DEFI. Ginger. There you go. That's it. Right on. Cool. Cheers, guys. Really appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. We will get started. Okay. I will start talking, and I will assume that people will return to their seats. So hi, everyone. Today, I will be talking a little bit about MakerDAO. Unfortunately, I had a little trouble getting here in time, and the presentation is not what I wanted it to be, but bear with me, and I think we'll have an interesting overview of MakerDAO and the challenges that it's facing today. The title of my presentation is Breaking the Dunbar Barrier. For those of you who are not familiar with the term, the Dunbar number is the number at which a social group can no longer know every other single individual in the group. And as I will be showing, MakerDAO has been growing a lot lately, and we are approaching this Dunbar barrier. When individuals no longer can know each other in a group, that brings with it certain challenges. And today I want to present some ideas about what we can do to take on those challenges. I'll firstly introduce myself and one of the core units that I'm working for, MakerDAO SES. We'll have a very brief history and the anatomy of MakerDAO, and then I'll be talking about these challenges that we're facing and some ideas of how we can deal with them. So myself, I have a background in software engineering. I joined the Maker project in 2017. Back then, that was as head of engineering of the Maker Foundation. Maker Foundation was a centralized entity which was responsible for bootstrapping the Maker protocol. But once the Maker Foundation fulfilled its purpose, MakerDAO went back to full decentralization. And that's when we formed the core units that I will be talking about. And today, I'm working as one of the co-founders of one of those core units, MakerDAO SES. This is since last year. MakerDAO SES is not the only core unit. We have about 20 core units at MakerDAO. SES stands for Sustainable Ecosystem Scaling. And what we do is we try to remove barriers between decentralized workforce, capital, and work. To go a little bit deeper into that, because it's not obvious what that means, removing barriers between decentralized workforce, capital, and work. I just want to briefly talk about this diagram, which lays out our strategy. So what we do in practice is we look at MakerDAO and the structure that it has today, and we try to identify challenges, scaling bottlenecks, coordination problems, things that are challenging as the DAO scales up. We then do the research that is necessary to do the analysis, provide some potential solutions for these challenges. And lastly, we also work with others to put those solutions in practice. So for this, we run an incubation program. We'll be talking about core units quite a bit today. So this is what we do. We help new teams getting onboarded into MakerDAO. As it says, it's a launchpad for new core units and an onboarding pipeline for new groups. We combine this with sponsorship and advisory to help MakerDAO scale up, because the challenges that we are facing, they're quite unique, and this is quite new for everyone. So very brief history of Maker and DAO for those of you who are not familiar. The official start, I guess, of MakerDAO was in 2014, even before the name Maker existed. Some of you may know Rune Christensen. Rune Christensen was together with Nikolai Meshekian was the co-founder of the MakerDAO project. And this all began in 2014 when Rune posted a Reddit post about e-money. And this was already the idea of creating a stablecoin. But the details were still pretty hazy, and really the path to where we are today went through different phases. It took 3 years to assemble a small or relatively small team and get to the point where the first version of the protocol, which was like a beta version of Maker, that one was launched at the end of 2017, called Single Collateral DAI. With Single Collateral DAI, the idea is quite simple. You can lock in Ethereum as collateral in the MakerDAO protocol, and you can then take out a loan that is denominated in DAI. And DAI, the DAI stablecoin, is roughly, or is soft pegged to the US dollar. Now, Single Collateral DAI was not the full vision of the MakerDAO protocol. In 2019, 2 years later, the actual production version that is in production today went live, called Multi-Collateral DAI. And Multi-Collateral DAI allows not just to lock up Ethereum, but to lock up multiple types of collateral, such as WBTC and other tokens, but also in the future and today already in some prototypes, real-world assets. This was when, this is where I helped the team at Maker to build and deploy the production version of the protocol today. And as I mentioned, this was done at the Maker Foundation. The Maker Foundation was a centralized entity, and it had 3 purposes. That was the launch of Multi-Collateral DAI. It was pushing DAI to critical mass, meaning that the protocol should make enough profits to sustain itself in a decentralized manner. And then third, the tools should be created for governance, to put the tools in the hands of the community so that they can govern the protocol themselves. And then in 2021, when those goals were reached, the Maker Foundation dissolved, and we were basically full circle back to fully decentralized operations last year. So MakerDAO was at the very beginning of DeFi. One could say it's the original DeFi project. And the first big contribution that the project made is a decentralized stablecoin. Today I want to talk more about the second big contribution that I believe we can make, which is the decentralized work paradigm in a DAO. So anatomy of MakerDAO, what are MIPS, core units, and delegates? I think many of you, of course, most of you will be familiar with these concepts, but want to briefly outline them as how they are implemented in Maker. So Maker governance has the concept of Maker improvement proposals. These are proposals that can be put forward and that Maker voters can vote on and that they can ratify. Today there are more than, I believe, 70 Maker improvement proposals that are posted and many of them ratified by the DAO. And the Maker improvement proposal framework at Maker is one of the most advanced in the space. So if you are interested in DAO governance and almost the creation of a new legal body, as it were, then make sure to have a look at Maker improvement proposal. So you can go to mips.makerdao.com, which is our portal for that. There are 3 Maker improvement proposals that are especially important, and they are templates. These are the MIP39, MIP40, and MIP41, quite infamous in the Maker community, and they define the core unit framework. So MIP39 allows groups to propose a project, a team, and coupled with a MIP40 and MIP41, it allows them to request a budget to put the proposal in practice, so to work with a team of permanent contributors for Maker. And MIP41 is the ratification of the facilitator. The facilitator is the person or persons, because this could be more than one, who are responsible for proposing the core unit and managing its budget. And they are basically the bridge between the Maker core units, the DAO teams, and Maker governance. So we have seen a lot of growth with these core units. This is a list, and it's not even fully up to date, but at the end of last year, there were 29 maker improvement proposals that were made, specifically MIP39s that proposed new core units. And you will see on the list, of course, the usual suspects. A crypto protocol needs, for example, a protocol engineering team responsible for smart contract development. You may know that MakerDAO has its own Oracle solution, so there is an Oracle's team. There is a risk team for the finance side of things, but there are many, many more that contribute to the operations and the further extension of the Maker protocol. So as I mentioned, there was quite a bit of growth throughout last year, and we ended the year with about 20 core units. And in total, because there are on average 5 members of each core unit, 5 permanent members, these are 100 permanent DAO members that are working for MakerDAO. These permanent team members, they are paid by the protocol. Most of them have a bonus in the MKR governance token, and the idea is that their incentives are strongly aligned with the good of the protocol to make it sure that the protocol succeeds. We even made the news on this. The second construct is Maker delegates, and these delegates were voted in later down the road when MKR voters no longer had the bandwidth to follow up with everything that's happening in Maker governance. So as we are growing, I wanted to pitch a few ideas as we are approaching the Dunbar barrier, how we can further grow MakerDAO and make the MakerDAO governance even more advanced. So challenges are that MKR holders and delegates have limited bandwidth, and today there is a big challenge, which is to create a vision, high-level goals, and to align all these different groups in the DAO. And this is what we are working on today. So one of the constructs that we are already creating on top of the MIP39, MIP40, and MIP41s, which are the basic core unit frameworks, are strategic initiatives. And these are basically their formal initiatives, they're roadmaps that are shared between multiple core units. And we have a management framework that allows these core units to coordinate through this process and develop these shared roadmaps. These roadmaps are then presented to the Maker delegates, who can then vote not just on the individual core units, but also on the outcome of these roadmaps. And what we hope is that we will now move to the next phase, where delegates will be responsible for strategy and vision as well. What we think is that this might actually evolve into something much more familiar, something that looks like a political system, but not the usual one, but one that is completely run on the blockchain. MKR voters, they are already staking their MKR for delegates, and we believe that these delegates, with the limited bandwidth that they have, they should team up, and they should basically form governance parties. And then these delegates, with their governance parties, they would be able to fund the core units, the domain teams that are doing the actual work. We call this the liquid plutocratic election model. This would also be an opportunity to take care of another challenge, which is that there is currently no budget cap for Maker. And it's difficult to plan if you don't know how much growth MKR holders want us to target. And this is another thing that could be implemented as part of almost an election cycle, if you like. So that was it, my overview of MakerDAO. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that I sparked some ideas about how we can scale DAOs even further. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it okay? 1, 2. Yes, it works. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming today. Today we're going to talk about the BalancerDAO. It's a fairly new organization that was born in January. And we're just starting to experiment a little bit with the organization and the way we operate. So first of all, a little bit about myself. I'm taking care of the partnership and marketing. And on the left, you can see what I used to do before becoming a DAO full-timer. I used to be like a normal, a member of the society, used to pay taxes and stuff. And now things have changed a little bit. And that's a little bit about myself. So first of all, why we needed a BalancerDAO? There are two main reasons why we decided to do that. The number one, of course, is, let's say, some regulatory concerns that probably are fairly common in the DeFi ecosystem in general. And then, of course, the tendency for the DeFi culture to go toward decentralization and to try to achieve anti-fragility. This is something very important that we try to achieve through this new kind of organizations that we have. So everything started from a Genesis team. So this was a group of, here you have 3 people, but technically it was like 5. And that came on board, I would say, around summer last year. And they were like members from the community. And we didn't really know exactly what to do, but we started to create this group of people that wasn't part of Balancer Labs, which is basically the organization that created Balancer, the protocol. So the the Genesis team initially had very limited responsibilities. I remember those days when we didn't really know what to do, and we spent most of our time taking care of giving user support, and of course the liquidity mining. So basically we had a liquidity mining committee that used to decide where those BAL tokens from the liquidity mining program were going to be allocated. And these were pretty much the only 2 things we used to do, not much. But then things started to evolve a little bit. And in January, sorry, actually, I missed this part, actually. So initially, we had a very difficult start. And especially because probably, let's say, from some member of the Balancer Labs, they didn't really know who we were and exactly what we were supposed to do. So there was a little bit of detachment from us. And on top of that, we weren't really part of any meaningful conversation. All decisions were taken, of course, within Balancer Labs. And we were just, oops, something happened. Okay. And we were just, we couldn't really give much of an input in there. And this all because we didn't really have any specific goal. We didn't know who we were, what we were supposed to do, etc. So as you can see here, we had a Balancer Labs that had all the ideas, and they had a big influence over the protocol. So they were able to take their ideas and then transform them in something that came up and became a product on the Balancer protocol. And on the other side, you had us, which basically, again, is this small group of people that could, of course, could bring some value, but we didn't really know what to do. We were a little bit lost. Especially at the beginning, this was a big problem for us. We didn't really know exactly what to do. But then we started to evolve a little bit, and we changed from like this sporadic group on something a little bit more structured. And we decided to create a new kind of infrastructure where we took it a little bit from, Index Corp, Yearn, etc. And we came out with a number of sub-DAOs that had, their specific tasks and things to do. And this is why in 2022, we created BalancerDAO. with very specific sub-DAOs, as you can see. And they were independent, but they were loosely controlled by, like, let's say, a ops, which is like a sub-DAO that could control, a little bit, could coordinate the work around, around the DAO. So the DAO coordination pretty much came through a number of activities. So first of all, we had a loose coordination by ops. So ops is still taking care of pay, onboarding, and anything that has to do with the daily, activity. Then we had like a monthly appointments where we had like a community hall and then generally health checks. On weekly, we run every Monday, we have a DAO call where we basically inform all the other members of the DAO what we're doing, what we're working on. And then, of course, we also have sub-DAOs call that is basically meant to coordinate, those little groups of people that work towards certain goals. And then, of course, we had a daily activity that is run through pretty much, Discord, where we had like dedicated channels, etc. And that's where pretty much where we spend most of our time. We also introduced Coordinate. For those of you that don't know, Coordinate is a way to reward new members and existing members through a number of points that can be distributed during the month. Okay, and this, as I said, is for both core members and new members. So basically, every time we have a new guy that wants to participate, guy or girl that wants to participate, is going to be added to this group, and you will see in real time these people that, depending on how much they're involved and the commitment that they have, they can be rewarded by their work thanks to the other guys recognizing their work. So where do we go from where we are today? Well, this is a big question mark because probably I hope you understood that the structure that we have at the moment is still a work in progress and is still something that is going towards something else. At the moment, we have a number of sub-DAOs, but they're still loosely coordinated through a central authority that can give a little bit of direction on where to go. The next step is going to be most probably those independent groups actually detaching completely from, let's say the ops and becoming completely independent. So they don't have to. We will not be needed to give these weekly calls maybe or monthly updates because they are going to work towards a goal that is on a quarterly basis. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the friendly fork model, which is something that I consider very, very important. And the reason why I consider it important is because it helps us develop our ecosystem, the Balancer ecosystem. In general terms, we can say that Balancer Labs strategically has decided or prefers for now not to expand beyond the number of chains that we are present at the moment, which is Polygon, Arbitrum, and of course Ethereum mainnet. So through friendly forks, we are able to actually bring the Balancer technology on chains where Balancer is not present at the moment. At the same time, this gives the opportunity to independent teams to work on the Balancer protocol, develop new products, and increase the base of dev base, I would say, that can work on the protocol level. It gives us also treasury diversification, because through the friendly fork model, we generally ask those teams to allocate to the BalancerDAO a certain amount of their token to our treasury. So this not only increases, of course, the value of the treasury in general, but also give us some treasury diversification. And then a final goal, which is something that is going to be in the long term, is going to be the building a DAO of DAOs. Okay, so what do I mean by that? I mean that in the future, the DAO will be able to control through their stake in those independent teams, independent projects, like an important voice, and influence or maybe participate on those other things. Okay, it's gone. I don't know why. Oh, there you go. It's back. It's back. So, as I said, through this stake in those projects, we can actually control and participate in the development of these new DAOs. At the moment, we have our friends already of Beethoven X on Phantom. Then we have Hexagon that is going to launch in 4 weeks on Avalanche, and then a couple of more that I'm working on, but I cannot tell you right now. So the idea is to expand the ecosystem, the Balancer ecosystem, way beyond where we can go today, or what let's say the normal protocol could do. And this is exactly what we want to do. So thank you, and I hope you enjoyed, and see you next time.
Question?
Do I close this thing, or?
Thank you for the presentation. And
No problem.
I'm just curious, as we just heard from MakerDAO about the core units, and now we have sub-DAOs. Would you mind elaborating a bit more how you think about the differences of these structures?
Yeah. Well, actually, we see MakerDAO as probably as an example for us. In my eyes, and I'm talking about on a personal level, I think Maker is showing the DeFi ecosystem the way to go. So you guys are the most advanced when it comes to DAO organization and DAO structure. So what we want to do is actually emulate a little bit your vision and create these independent groups and teams that can set goals and work towards those goals on a quarterly basis, which is fairly similar to what you guys have. This will be a departure from where we are today, where it's not really like that. We still do not have sub-DAOs, quarterly goals or yearly goals, etc. So we want to move from where we are today to something more structured and more well-defined, like MakerDAO. Yeah, does it make sense? Yeah. Oh, you're not from MakerDAO. Okay, I thought you were. Okay, cool. Anybody else? No more? Cool. Okay, man.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a slight change in the schedule. Instead of Joanne, we have Deniz. He would speak at 4:20, but he will speak now. Thank you.
All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Deniz. I go by 0x Deniz online, and I'm actually from around here, so it's been pretty cool, very exciting to meet my Web3 friends in my hometown. Yeah, don't take the weather for granted because this is not how it usually is, but let's just enjoy it. So I am with MakerDAO. More specifically, I am with the MakerDAO core unit. I'm the core unit facilitator and the product manager there. And the DAO core unit, it stands for Development and UX. We are basically a product team of 6, one of MakerDAO's product teams. And we are currently focused on building the DAO governance tooling for MakerDAO. So our main product that we're focusing on is the, we call it the voting portal. And it's basically the tool that we use at Maker to create and interact with governance proposals. We also use it as our delegate platform, right? So you can find all of the active delegates there. You can look at their profiles. You can see what they are standing for, right? You can look at their voting history and stuff. And then, of course, you can delegate and undelegate your tokens there. And it has some like extra features to mitigate governance attacks and stuff. So this is actually a new design that we're going to launch next week. So this is the first time we're showing it. We're pretty hyped on putting that out there. If you're working on DAO governance tooling and if you haven't checked it out before, this is like a custom built tool that we use at Maker. Have a look at it. It's vote.makerdao.com. Maybe there's some things that might inspire your own tool. And yeah, we're also happy to collaborate with you on it. Yeah, the thing is, as a team working on DAO governance tooling, it's pretty inevitable that you end up running into the conclusion that DAO governance is pretty tough. It's a bit of a pain point, to be honest. I think the reason why is because DAO governance systems are pretty difficult to change once they are live, right? A big part of it resides on chain. All of the processes are used by the community every day. The data structures are very difficult to adapt once they are in use, right? So it's overall not just a domain that you can easily work on individually as a team. You really need to figure out which other teams are working on what, and you really need to coordinate. And that's not easy. But as a team, we do believe that there's a lot of potential to improve it without having to come up with a new framework for governance, because at previous, let's say, conferences, I always see like a lot of talks about new governance frameworks, basically starting from scratch. But yeah, we have a lot of DAOs out there with a governance system in place. And as a team, we believe that there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that can also be applied on existing DAO systems, right? So we believe that there's a lot of opportunity for process innovations, but also policy, new incentive models, and of course, improving the UX of the governance tooling. So the UX of the interfaces. So we've been thinking about it a lot. Like, how can we come up with new ideas, and also how can we collaborate with other DAO thinkers? And when we realized that this event was going to happen in Amsterdam, like we were really impressed with the DAOist in Lisbon. And so we basically decided to make a contribution to the event through a sponsorship. And then we also worked on organizing a workshop. We call it the Global Design Jam. And actually we did it yesterday. It was super cool. We basically spent a full day with a bunch of people from the space to together figure out solutions on common DAO governance problems. And we did it with a crazy bunch of people. I'm still like so proud and impressed by the people we got together in a room. We got like governance facilitators from, of course, Maker, but also Radical. We got people from Yearn. We got people from, there's someone from Yearn. We got like a researcher from Other Internet, LivePeer. I mean, just a really nice bunch of people. Also some that I've never met before. So that was really valuable. And basically what we did, we designed a workshop based on design thinking methodologies. So the main model that we used for designing the workshop is the double diamond model, which basically is all about switching between divergent and convergent thinking, right? Because that's a really nice way of basically facilitating the creative process when working with multiple people. And so the first part of the workshop, we tried to brainstorm problems that we could solve. And then the second part of the workshop was all about figuring out potential solutions to those challenges. The first part of the workshop we actually spent on figuring out what the challenges are that we face in DAO governance. So we basically asked everyone to take some time in silence to write down all of the things they run into, so all of the frustrations and irritations they face every day when working in governance, but also like all of the more abstract challenges that they are aware of in the space. And then, as you can see, we put all of them on the wall in the back. We did some clustering, some voting, basically some convergence there to figure out which are the most important challenges that we are running into. And then we also started looking for synergies in the team, right? Because we were with 11 people. There were some people that were kind of fascinated by the same topics or that were running into the same problems all the time. So we ended up making like smaller teams. We ended up with 3 teams in total. And then we shared some ideation methods, also based on the design thinking methodologies. And then it really started. We started jamming. And some of us stayed inside. Some of us actually went outside. We find like a nice spot at the canals. The one on the left, that's still my favorite picture to represent the day. It was really fun. Every now and then we got back as a team, as a group. We were actually in the same venue, but then downstairs in like the wine cellar. We did some pitching, and then we also gave each other some feedback and tried to iterate based on that feedback. And then at the end of the day, we had like final pitches where we presented the concepts that we came up with as teams. And then, that's actually what I'm going to show you in a bit. So the 3 biggest challenges that we surfaced, so the challenges that that most people voted on and most people felt like were the most important, were related to onboarding. So I think everyone that's working in DAOs realizes that DAO onboarding the state of onboarding is horrible. Like for new entrants, it's very difficult to make sense of the fragmented information. You have like a Discord server that's booming. You have like a Discord forum. And then there might be some fragmented documentation here and there, but usually you don't know where to start. You lack a lot of the context to understand what's there. But also for DAO operators, right? For people that are running these DAOs and that are trying to find new people, it's just frustrating to having to manually guide people through this onboarding process. So there's a lot of room for improvement there. The second thing that we surfaced was accountability. So right now in DAOs, it's quite difficult to hold teams accountable for the quality of their work and also the relevance of their work once they have their budget or their grant approved by governance. So we talked about that a lot. And then the third one I wanted to highlight is participation. So there are some incentivization schemes in the space, like governance mining, which incentivizes direct voting. But there's not a lot of ways to nurture or to incentivize qualitative contributions to governance, right? Like writing proposals or adding to discussions on the forum. So that's another thing we talked about as a group. I would recommend, like, if you're interested in this kind of stuff, please follow us on Twitter, MakerDAO. We're going to actually digitize everything and then share all of the output of the workshop. So if you're curious to see like this abstracted list of common DAO governance challenges, then definitely have a look there. We're going to post it there in the next couple of days. All right, let's take some time to look at the concepts that the teams came up with. The first team took on the challenge of onboarding. And more specifically, the challenge statement that they looked at is how might we empower interested new members to self-select their role and contributions to a new DAO. And the goal was to come up with something that is scalable and that is something that can be implemented in existing DAO systems. And what they came up with is actually very cool. They called it minimum viable onboarding window. I think the name is because we had this thing with minimum viable yesterday. That was like I don't know. We really vibed with that way of framing things. Basically, it's a diamond-shaped onboarding funnel where the beginning of the flow is very narrow and very beginner-friendly. Right? You don't really need a lot of context. You don't need any context actually to answer those questions. It's going to be DAO agnostic. So those questions are just going to be focused on what you're interested in as an individual, but also like what your skills are, how much time you have available, how much time you want to invest. And then the idea is, as you go through this onboarding funnel, the questions become more personal, the questions become more specific to DAOs, and there's going to be like this self-selection process where people will be slowly moving from questions like what are you most passionate about, how much time do you have, to more specific questions like what kind of role, what kind of contributions would be fitting for you as an individual. What's really cool about this concept as well is that they figured that it should be optimized for quick wins, right? So in the first days or weeks of the process that this individual is going through, there should be some wins, right? Some successes that can be motivating. So, for example, it should nurture doing some kind of high-profile contribution to a DAO, even if it's like small, even if it's tiny. It can result in a financial payout, but also social capital, right? I mean, as a new DAO entrant, I know it's very valuable to have like some high-profile things because it's just good to get your name out there, and it really helps connecting with other people. The idea is that in parallel to this concept, there's going to be a DAO librarian, which is actually a new role, which is focused on guiding the individuals that are in this funnel. The idea is that the librarian can help people dig deeper into certain topics if they're interested in it. But also, for example, if they get stuck, the DAO librarian knows the DAO very well and knows all of the resources. And then, can basically refer to the right things at the right time. But in general, I think this concept is something that should be really scalable, and it doesn't need a lot of manual input from existing DAO contributors. So that's a really cool thing, and I kind of feel like a lot of DAOs would be interested in this. I hope something like this will emerge. I know teams like Rabbit Hole are working on something that's very relevant to this, but we're not really sure what it's gonna end up in a year or so. But yeah, this is the first concept. Really exciting stuff. Moving on to the next team. The next team was focusing on the accountability challenge, right? So how do we hold teams accountable for their work once their budget proposal or like their grants proposal has been approved by governance through like a coin vote? And if you think about it, it's kind of weird that we don't have this in DAOs because, for example, in Web 2, if you enter some kind of collaboration or contract with a company, or if there's like a cross-company collaboration, there's a really formal process in place with a lot of like milestones. So, for example, the first thing you do is you aim for a signed quote, right? So you have to sign a quote, and that's already like a first legal milestone that provides some kind of accountability in that sense. And then there's payment terms, right? So the payment will probably be done in 3 or 4 terms with like, you have 30 days to pay the money. And if you fuck up as a team in the process, you're likely not to get the last parts of those payments. So what they came up with is a process innovation where they basically require that proposals that request a treasury fund must include a definition of success or a definition of done. The idea is that it should be objective and it should be measurable in that sense. Another requirement that they come up with that should be implemented is that proposals that exceed a certain threshold in terms of how much money they are asking for should include appointed members of a committee of advisors. And this means that this committee will basically be involved in reporting and evaluations of the team. And it's kind of similar to an investor board, which is really cool because as an entrepreneur, an investor board can be really valuable because it provides you like a direct line with a mentor to figure out where to go next. It provides a safe space for basically talking about how things are really going. And the nice thing is that it adds another layer of accountability. And then another mechanism that we came up with is that The committee of advisors can also be required to approve payments or approve budget top-ups based on the team's performance. And the nice thing about it is that these advisors then are associated with this initiative, with this team, and thereby their reputation is at stake, right? So there's this kind of there's this really tight-knit accountability process that you can achieve there. And what I like about this one is that it's feasible to implement for also existing DAO systems. So it's really a process innovation, and there's a ton of those innovations, I think, that we can still unlock as a space. Moving on to the last team, they were focusing on participation. And basically, the challenge statement they took on is how might we incentivize quality contributions to DAO governance? And this is a really tough one, as the DAO thinkers in this space know. And what they came up with is really cool. It's a rewarding mechanism. They call it vested voting initiatives, vested voting incentives. And the idea is that there is a rewards fund that is provisioned by the DAO, by the treasury, and over a period of, for example, 1 year, the payout of this fund is calculated based on multiple inputs. And these inputs are not only voting weight and voting participation, which is what we often see in governance mining schemes, but also more qualitative inputs like participation on discussions, right, or communication, but also to what extent they have been co-authoring proposals or actually voting on proposals that actually ended up passing. So that's really cool. It really incentivizes qualitative contributions, and then the rewards can be in the governance token. It could be in stables, could be in NFTs, could be in anything, basically. And my favorite part about this idea is that the payout can also be split between delegates and delegators. Because right now, what we see in DAOs and also at Maker, like recognized delegates or delegates, they get incentivized to do their work because it requires a lot of time. But there's not really a way to incentivize people to delegate. And delegation is actually a really powerful mechanism because active participation in a DAO is like really complex. You need a lot of knowledge. You need to invest a lot of time. And yeah, delegating is something that is really impactful to a DAO ecosystem or to a governance ecosystem. So we should be figuring out ways to incentivize delegation as well. And yeah, that's also what this team achieved with their concept. So vested voting incentives, very interesting. Also feasible to implement on top of existing governance systems like at Maker. We've been here for a while, right? And our on-chain voting system is not that easy to change up, but this is something we might be able to implement. So that's really cool. So let me close off with some takeaways for people that are thinking about DAO governance or that are actually building the processes and programs. I would say let's prioritize DAO governance. I know it's difficult. I know it's difficult to improve and change these systems because they're so ingrained in the protocol, and you really need to coordinate with other teams as well. You're going to need, you're going to need engineers. You're going to need designers. You're going to need a lot of extra overhead for the governance facilitators. But yeah, I mean, DAO governance is important. It's very fundamental to this space. It not only adds to the resilience of the protocols that we're building, but it also adds to the quality of discussion that end up deciding the long-term strategy of our decentralized projects. The second thing I want to recommend is to apply design thinking methodologies in this thinking, right? Because what it really does is it puts the user at center stage, and when figuring out governance, you should really consider the perspective of the user, of the token holder, of the various stakeholders out there. And by applying these methodologies, it would actually, it's gonna help you come up with cool ideas, as we just showed. We came up with this in a day, so I mean, if you put some effort in it and use the right methodologies, you can definitely come up with a lot of cool things. There is a lot to learn, or a lot to innovate on the process level, policy, incentives, and the governance tooling level, so there's no need to reinvent governance from scratch. Try to look for the low-hanging fruits that does not require messing with the smart contracts themselves. And then obviously, there's a lot to learn from your fellow DAO big brains, so really try to come out of your shell, meet some people that are also thinking about DAO governance, and yeah, really try to share some of the learnings and insights that you come up with as a team. Because, I mean, what the nice thing about the DAO governance space is that we all need to get this right. We're all figuring out how this works. There's no room for competitiveness, so there's really like this positive sum energy that you can really lean into, and yeah, it can contribute to the health of your own project, but also to the wider space. So that's it for today. Thanks for listening, and enjoy DevConnect.
Ladies and gentlemen, instead of Guillaume Felly, we now have Alvin Lee from D-Gate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alvin. I'm an evangelist of DGate. But today I'm here to share a little bit about my own thoughts about DAOs and this idea of the crypto nation. So let's make it fun. We're nearing the end. People have started drinking. So if anyone wants to ask a question in the middle of the talk or give a comment, you get a free T-shirt from my lovely assistants. And the T-shirt has the code of our ERC20 contract. So if you want the T-shirt, ask me a question. The rise of the crypto nation. What do these two groups of people have in common? The people on the left and the people on the right. Anyone? Most of them speak English on the right and on the left. Yes, that's true. Anyone else? Sorry? Community. Yes. So the people on the left, they are part of the American nation. They believe in certain common things. I'm sure there are many American friends here. They believe in the American dream, in freedom, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The people on the right believe in cats and dancing, and also freedom, code, and decentralization. Obviously, this is Vitalik, and he's doing a nice stance here. I think there's a lot of commonalities between people who believe in certain things and are bounded by certain geographies. So I like to argue that we're beginning to see the emergence of a crypto nation, just like we see it 300 years ago, the emergence of an American nation. And this nation is bound by ideals and not really geographies, but they have very common similarities. I think that, would you like a T-shirt, this gentleman over here? Yeah. For answering loudly and clearly, this gentleman over here. We have 4 T-shirts left. Who are the crypto natives among us? Gamers? Yeah. These are who is this guy over here? The early crypto natives, who are they? Who's this guy over here? Anyone know? Hal Finney, that's right. Who said that? Would you like a T-shirt, sir? Hal Finney, that's right. Hal Finney, I think that Hal Finney might be Satoshi, but I'm not sure. But Hal Finney was an early supporter of Bitcoin. Yeah, was an early supporter of Bitcoin, and he believed in the cryptographic cyberpunk ideals, and is one of the earliest people. The suits, the financial guys, they saw the chance to make a lot of money. The Winklevoss brothers here, they saw the chance to make a lot of money, and they did in crypto twice. And on the right, who is that? Roger Ver. He's an early Bitcoin supporter. The early crypto natives believed in many different things, but they all came together in one hodgepodge of a really strong community bound by the loose DAOs of Bitcoin and later Ethereum. But to stick around and to really be part of the community, I would argue that you need to believe in freedom. And you also need to believe in freedom that's bounded by certain things. The harm principle of John Stuart Mill says that you shouldn't harm anyone when you're pursuing your own freedom and your own pursuit of happiness. And I believe that that should be one major criteria for engaging in crypto in the future, in the long run equilibrium. And the other one that stands out is inclusion. That's why we are here today. DAOs tend to offer inclusion to the people. And the code the governance by code allows most people a transparent way to partake in the governance, just as MakerDAO mentioned earlier, or Balancer. The earliest days were marked by speculation. Speculation to try to, the earliest days of Bitcoin, for example, and the ICO craze were marked by speculation. But increasingly, we're seeing specialization in terms of what the blockchain can do. Just like in a nation, you need people doing different things. Or in any economy, you need people doing different things. So we have the NFT guys, we have the DeFi guys, we have the GameFi guys coming up, and many, many more people coming up. So I think that it's healthy to have specialization in this nation of ours. One other trend that's the trend from speculation to specialization is happening over the course of the last maybe 10 years. But a much larger trend, I think, is happening that spans right about 1,500 years, which is the trend from demos to DAOs. Demos, of course, means people. And democracy means power to the people. The earliest form of direct democracy is probably in Mesopotamia. But the most famous form of direct democracy is in the 500 to 450 BC in ancient Athens and surrounding city-states of Greece. They were characterized by every male citizen out of the 100,000 or so people in Athens could speak in the assembly, and some of them did, even if they weren't rich or powerful. And people were allotted by lot to govern certain councils by lottery. The ideas of ancient Athens of direct participation in democracy has echoes in what we're doing today, right here in the DAOist, as well as in DAOs in general, at least in the way that we practice them today. I think that the crucial difference, as defined by Vitalik, in his idea of decentralized autonomous companies, or DACs, commonly known as DAOs now, is that we have to be governed by the code, and the code has to be transparent. And that's also an echo of the ancient Greeks, who said that you have to be able to audit the results of what you agree on, and you have to have the freedom to speak. So, in many ways, when we are reinventing the wheel, we have to think about how technology enables us to scale the principles of ancient Athens, and what is the limit of the scale available. So, I'm an evangelist at DGate. It's a decentralized exchange built on the principles of trustless and permissionless. These are our guiding principles. And we're trying to be a very small part of that infrastructure to create a world where people can interact based on code. And one of our taglines is investing in freedom. The idea that we're trying to be part of that economy where people can interact freely using trustless and permissionless ideals and using tools that are governed by the community and protocols that are governed by the community. So testnet is live. You can check it out on testnet@dgate.com. And that's the end of the short interlude about DGate. So, as I was preparing this talk, some questions remain as I was interacting with everyone at the DAOist. It's a really great crowd who are at the forefront of what it means to be a DAO. Some things that remain in my mind that I'd like to ask your opinion on is, how do we decide? Right now it's by tokens, oftentimes, but should it be by the number of tokens alone, or should it be something similar to the ancient Greeks, by sovereign identity? Or should it be by reputation, according to DXDAO, or some combination hybrid? How much delegation should we give to a certain group of people for everyday execution. How big can a DAO get before the Dunbar effect hits and we break down? How do we avoid the tyranny of the majority and protect the minority from harm? And largely, how do we interact, or how do DAOs interact with other cities, countries, states, and individuals? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. But I think that in the future, we're going to see a whole breed of people like us all over the world coming together at conferences, but interacting mostly through code and through online meetings. And this is every bit as valid a nation as the Chinese diaspora or the Jewish diaspora or any diaspora out there that shares common beliefs, dress code, identity, and culture. So I invite you to think about this concept and join us in thinking about this, how we're going to build this crypto nation. Thank you, and can you always reach us at DGateDex, and if you have any questions, we have some t-shirts. Thank you. Or any thoughts, or you just want to say hi? If not, yeah, I think we'll hand over. Thank you so much. It's permissionless listing for DGate. So any ERC token can be listed through a few steps. You just do it yourself. You put it on the website and it's on the protocol and it's done. It's like quite a simple process. It's very similar to how you would list a token on Uniswap. Yeah. Normally you would put your own liquidity for any token that you create. It can be single-sided or double-sided liquidity. So you might want to put in US. Sorry? It's an order book, so you can put liquidity on one side or both sides with your token and USDC. Yeah. Or there might be external market makers who come in and provide liquidity as well. But currently it's permissionless, so anyone can create it. The mainnet is launching in a few months. So right now we have a testnet. You can try it out. And with test tokens on Rinkaby, Ethereum Rinkaby. Yeah. Yes, sir.
How will we achieve voting by? You mentioned this idea of voting by sovereign identities and maybe one person, one vote.
Yes.
But how do you think this could be achieved?
Yeah. Can I carry on talking? Yeah. How will we achieve one person, one vote in the theoretical system? I don't think it's theoretically from first principles. I don't think it's 100% possible. But because right now we cannot associate every single address with every single person. So, but if you want to dox yourself and say, I associate this address with this person, then you give the authority to that address to have your identity in the real world. And that way you can give one person, one vote. And it might be a hybrid system where half of the power comes from one person, one vote, and half of the power comes from your number of tokens that you hold. And all in different situations. So I think it's really exciting how the new world, we can create many different hybrid voting systems that the ancient Greeks didn't have because they didn't have the technology for it. And all this can be put on the blockchain. So I think it's quite a fun thing to think about. Yeah. T-shirt for you. Thank you. I think we're done. Thank you so much.
You don't have time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi there.
Hey, hello everyone. First, thank you so much for sticking around until now. Let's be honest, there's like free drinks and everything, so thank you very much for your attention. So today we want to talk about SnapshotX and programmable governance, mostly on layer 2. The first thing we want to talk about, oh yeah, and I'm Nathan from Snapshot. This is Ohad from Starkware. And as you'll see, like SnapshotX is this project building on Starknet, the ZK rollup. So first, little tiny bit about DAOs. The thing that's really exciting about DAOs is that it's code at the center and humans around the code. And that doesn't mean that DAOs are not about humans. They're really much more about humans than regular organizations. But that means that these humans can kind of trust each other to do the right thing. They can trust each other to play a game for which the rules are quite clear for everyone and that are mutually beneficial. When a DAO wins, it means the community wins, and when the community wins, it means that the DAO wins. So this is kind of like the design philosophy we had in mind when thinking about SnapshotX. So these nice triangles are actually very simple. On top, it's security guarantees. On the bottom left, it's cost, and on the bottom right, it's flexibility. And as you can see, DAOs will can choose any of these kind of governance framework, and very often we see a lot of DAOs using Snapshot right now. So Snapshot is less secure because it's not entirely on a blockchain, but it's extremely cheap. It is $0 to vote, no gas fees because of the off-chain architecture. And it is extremely flexible because from off-chain, we can read a lot of interesting stuff on-chain and decide that this counts as voting power. If you're using a regular governance framework on L1, it is extremely secure. That is the absolute most secure you can do. But this is going to cost a lot in gas fees because computation is very expensive on layer 1. And it's not going to be that flexible because there's not that much that you can tell the governance contract that is worth voting power. SnapshotX is the same level of security as governance on layer 1 because it takes a lot of the complex numbers and abstracts them away from the layer 1 and calculates all that on layer 2. So you get the same level of security, but for a much, much cheaper cost. And in terms of flexibility, you will not have at the beginning the same kind of flexibility on SnapshotX that you have on Snapshot, but the cost will, this kind of flexibility and the cost over time is something we can improve massively. We can make SnapshotX much more flexible over the next few years and cost a lot less, especially as utilization ramps up. But there are still costs. And so for SnapshotX, we had to think really long and deeply about who was going to bear those costs. I think one of the very interesting things about Snapshot is that it's free, so you're incentivized to come and participate in governance because you have something to gain and it's not really going to cost you anything to participate. And we think that, even if gas fees were 50 times lower on SnapshotX than on Snapshot, there would still be people that would not show up and vote because a little bit of money is still money. So what we're planning on doing is having the DAOs fund their SnapshotX account, and from there, the price for participation is going to be deducted from this. So DAOs will foot the bills of participation because we think for decentralized organizations to really work well, you need people to come in and vote. So to understand a little bit more about Starknet and why we chose to put SnapshotX on Starknet, Ohad from Starkware will take it away from here.
Thank you, Nathan. So what is Starknet, the platform SnapshotX is built on? Starknet is basically a validity rollup. So all the trades are done on an L2 environment. And basically, Ethereum needs only to be aware to how to verify some proofs that everything was done correctly on the layer 2. So Starkware, the company that built Starknet, has already experience with lowering gas fees by several orders of magnitude compared to L1. And we plan to do the same with Starknet. But cost isn't everything, right? There are a lot of cheap platforms out there. So why SnapshotX chose Starknet outside all of the scaling environments? In addition to being affordable, Starknet offers the same security assumptions as L1 because any action that takes place on Starknet is actually verified by L1. So you have here the best of all trades, right? All the things that are done as part of the solution are cryptographically enforced to be true. We cryptographically prove that there was no double voting, that all the voting weights were calculated correctly, and with like negligible costs. So this is what makes Starknet an ideal platform for SnapshotX to operate on. And now let's discuss a bit how modular the solution would be and how it would actually look like from a design perspective. So when we at Starkware and the guys from Snapshot joined forces in order to design the system, our deal was to say, okay, Starknet is this affordable system. You can run any logic on it, including logic that would be very expensive to do on L1. And we aimed that Snapshot would give the backend support for this insane creativity and modularity. And the crazy idea that each and every DAO would come up to when they say, okay, this is how we want to maintain votes, this is what we want enforced, and how. And in order to increase this modularity, we say, okay, we have several areas of the solution that can be totally abstracted, and they can be mixed and matched according to the DAO needs. So let's cover what those areas are, and then we'll see how such design can, out of the box, support most of the use cases we see around us on the blockchain today. So first of all, the parameters of how to control the space itself, like the space that's having all the proposals. Who can control it? Is it a cold wallet? Is it the space itself? Is it message from Ethereum? And then what are the parameters for all of the proposal? Is it like 1 week, 2 days for proposal period? What is the voting delay? What is the quorum? Everything is configurable out of the box, and you can easily change it. The second area that we can potentially try and abstract is the authenticator. So how users are authenticating themselves against the system. Is it with Ethereum signature? Is it with Starknet signature? Maybe they have Solana identity or Oracle. All those potential possibilities are open because each DAO can decide which authenticators to work with. There's a third area that we offer abstraction is how to calculate voting strategies for users. Obviously, we can support balances on Starknet, but we can also support balances on Ethereum. We can work with an explicit Ethereum snapshot and prove to Starknet, okay, I had 200 tokens for voting in this snapshot of Ethereum. So we can easily create any on-chain logic that is currently offered by any DAO with this solution. It can be ERC20-based voting or ERC721-based voting or some other method. Everything is supported out of the box. And with a little bit of more technical work, such abstraction can also support something that is based on like Solana stake or on Oracle, so any other thing you'd like to have. And the last and fourth area of abstraction is, okay, we concluded this proposal with all of those parameters. What to do with the result? Maybe we would like to report to a chosen module on L1. Maybe we would like to report to Starknet, potentially modifying the space itself and changing the parameters for the next proposal. Maybe we would like to do something totally different. So those are all the areas that are currently abstracted by the protocol, and that each DAO can come and say, okay, I chose those parts and I combine them together to have my dream solution for voting. And I'll let Nathan explain how those can be mixed and matched in practice to cover many interesting use cases.
Yeah, well, I think nothing speaks better than actually seeing it. So let's look at some examples of the types of DAOs that you could build using SnapshotX. So here we've got a regular DeFi DAO. You can see you can authenticate and be recognized as who you say you are simply with an Ethereum signature or a transaction on L1. You've got a very basic voting strategy, ERC20 tokens, staked ERC20 tokens can count as well. Your execution is a custom handler on Ethereum. Maybe that your execution is built into your protocol. So you want your protocol to react to a certain vote in a certain way. Think about, like, for example, curve votes. The gauge distributes the rewards into different pools. And then you have a few, certain parameters that you put in place, a certain proposal threshold, the amount of votes you need to put a proposal forward, a certain quorum you have to reach for the proposal to be put in effect, and then finally the controller of your snapshot space, snapshot X space would be an Ethereum contract on L1 maybe. Another example could be some sort of a council. So the council would also authenticate using L1 measures, but the voting strategy would be a whitelist. So let's say that your council is 10 people. And these 10 people, they very well know the addresses of each other. So these 10 people, they will vote with a voting power of 1 based on their address. And if they reach 5 votes, that's quorum enough, and the proposal gets put forward. So this is kind of like in a way, this is a multi-sig. Because if you can execute on Ethereum or Polygon, this means that if enough people vote on SnapshotX for a certain transaction to be put forward on L1 or on Polygon, well, that's enough. That works. And that is able to control a custom address or anything on any other blockchain. And the controller here is quite interesting. The controller of this prototype space would be the space itself. And that's something we're really excited about, is the idea that if you want to put a change, if you want to add any Lego on top of that, another execution method or another voting strategy, then the only way to add this Lego is actually to get it through the process of governance. So here you've got a space that can only be changed in the process of its own governance. Another example would be an NFT DAO on Starknet. And this is interesting. You can see as well, you authenticate directly on Starknet. Your NFT would be your voting power. Execution would happen on Starknet. And the controller would be a parent space. And that means that this would be a sub-DAO. This is a sub-DAO that its architecture and its rules in terms of governance are dictated by a different space. And finally, you could even build, you can even use SnapshotX for non-EVM chains, which is something that we've been asked like a ton of times. It's probably one of the most requested features. When is Snapshot going to be available for non-EVM chains? Well, here, if you build an authenticator that can recognize Solana signatures, and that the way you're looking at balances on chain is looking at Solana SPL tokens, well, it's very easy. You can use Solana to have a snapshot space on Starknet, and execution will happen on Solana, authentication will happen on Solana, everything for your user is going to happen on Solana, but the computation, all of the hard work is going to be done on Starknet. So this is very interesting, I think, and I'm looking forward to seeing the kinds of DAOs that will be built using Snapshot, because this is a very interesting opportunity to build a very self-containing kind of governance process, what you might want to call a Turing-complete governance. So we were extremely humbled by the fact that when we presented SnapshotX about a few months ago, like 8 months ago in Lisbon at the DAOist, we had about 200 requests for people that wanted to test out SnapshotX, and we will come back to you very soon because the program is advancing well, and we'll be ready to have good stuff to show you very soon. In the meantime, don't hesitate, if you want to know more about this, to check out docs.snapshotx.xyz, because there you'll be able to see exactly where we are in the process. You'll be able to look at the code that is already available, and we really encourage people to try it, try to break it, try to see what they could add to it, because the goal of SnapshotX is at some point to be entirely decentralized, and that the community and not the Snapshot Labs team is building these modules. And if you want to, wait for Snapshot Labs to build an authenticator for Solana, maybe it's going to take months, maybe it's going to take a year. While if you want to build it now for your thing, if you want to build like a bribe module that could be added on top of this, if you want to build the delegation module before we have time to get into it, everything like that is possible because these contracts, they will be entirely self-sovereign and on Starknet. So yeah, it goes without saying we're extremely excited about this. And thank you so much for staying and sticking around so long and listening to this talk. Yeah, thanks guys. If anyone has any questions, I do not have t-shirts to give away, but please do ask your questions. Yeah, go for it.
Oh, okay. That's a mic already. Okay, guys. Yeah, actually, I was in Lisbon, but I think I haven't heard the presentation about Snapshot X. So actually, the question I wanted to ask is, how do you mitigate the user paying? So how is it organized that DAO pays for the vote instead of the person on the Starknet, as I understand?
Yeah, very good question. So what's going on right now is that Starknet is in alpha, so at the moment you don't have to pay a gas fee. So right now you could try it out and you would not pay gas fees, but at some point Starkware and Starknet will have, will have gas fees.
In 3 weeks, gas fees are mandatory.
In 3 weeks. So at that point, what's going to happen is your DAO will, let's say you're Uniswap, and you put $1,000 in your Snapshot X account, and every time someone votes, we take money from there to pay for the gas fees instead of taking it from your wallet. So you're only signing a message instead of actually making a transaction. So you're signing a message, and in your name, Uniswap pays whatever amount of money is necessary for gas fees. And I don't know if I said, but like the gas fees, you're much better at this than me, but we're expecting at least 50x lower than on L1.
Yeah. So, like Snapshot can echo the user request to the blockchain, right? The user sends a message, a signed vote to Snapshot X server, and then Snapshot X server wraps it as a Starknet transaction, send it to Starknet. Obviously, if he doesn't do it, users can send transactions on their own. Like, yeah, it's like meta transaction on Ethereum. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, thanks a lot for your question. Other question?
Well, yes. It seems like, let's say you have a token which is built on an upgradable contract.
Sorry, can you speak into the mic because I can't really hear?
Oh, okay. This is the mic. Okay. So if you have a token which is built on an upgradable contract, so from what I'm hearing, it will be very easy for you to have in your DAO voting to upgrade a contract where you upload the code for the new upgrade, and so once the voting is passes the vote, I mean, it automatically does the deployment?
Yeah, that's so right now on Snapshot you can't have trustless execution because the architecture is off-chain. You can have execution through an oracle like SafeSnap, but you can't have trustless execution that happens directly from a vote. And this is something that Snapshot X will make possible because once on Starknet a consensus is reached, then the Snapshot X contracts are going to send a message from Starknet to layer 1 for a certain thing to be resolved, for a certain thing to happen.
So how do I get in touch with somebody that can help me to build?
Sorry?
We can't hear you.
How do I get in touch with somebody that can help me to implement that?
Get in touch with me. Get in touch with me. We're really, like, I think a big part of Snapshot X is also, Snapshot X is going to be on-chain, and Snapshot X, we want it to be way more of a community project that everyone is working together on than the current version of Snapshot, which is very open. You can jump into our GitHub, do anything, but this is really something where we want to bring the community into it because we can think of a few cool modules that we could add, a few cool voting strategies, but there's like 350 different strategies on Snapshot. So we want to bring that amount of flexibility to Snapshot X, and for that we're going to need like community involvement, certainly. So really excited about your enthusiasm. Other questions?
Any question? No?
Thank you.
Well, yeah. Thank you, everyone.